When Ryan Mercer walked into that Boston restaurant with his last $50, he thought the cruelest thing that could happen was being stood up. He was wrong. What waited for him instead was a text message so vicious it would shatter what little pride he had left, and set in motion a chain of events that would prove some strangers see you better than the people who are supposed to love you. This is a story about humiliation, hidden grace, and the millionaire CEO who refused to look away when a good man was drowning in plain sight. If you want to see where kindness can lead when it meets quiet courage, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to know how far Ryan's story travels. The February wind off Boston Harbor didn't just bite, it carved. Ryan Mercer felt it work through the thin material of his only decent jacket as he stood outside Marcello's Italian kitchen, staring at the warm glow bleeding through the frosted windows. Inside, couples leaned across candlelit tables. Outside, a 34-year-old warehouse worker with calloused hands and a daughter waiting at home checked his phone for the 7th time in 10 minutes. 7:23 p.m. She was 23 minutes late. Ryan's thumb hovered over the message thread with Jessica, a name attached to a profile picture that had seemed kind, maybe a little shy. The type of woman who might understand that romance at his stage of life came with complications. The type who wouldn't mind that his idea of a nice evening meant somewhere with a kid's menu option for future reference and entrees under $15. His phone buzzed. Relief flooded through him so fast it almost hurt. Jessica. Hey, running late. Running. Be there soon. Save us a table? Ryan exhaled, his breath misting in the February cold, and pushed through the restaurant door. Warmth enveloped him immediately. The smell of garlic and basil, the murmur of conversation, the clink of wine glasses. A hostess with a practiced smile approached. Just one? She asked, already reaching for a single menu. Two, actually. Ryan straightened his shoulders. I'm meeting someone. The hostess's expression shifted to something more approving. Right this way. She led him to a small table by the window. Not the best seat in the house, but not the worst either. A place where you could watch the street and the snow beginning to fall in lazy spirals under the streetlights. Ryan sat down, adjusted his jacket, and checked his reflection in the window's dark glass. His hair was neatly combed. His shirt was clean, if a little worn at the collar. He'd shaved carefully, twice, and used the cologne his late wife had bought him 6 years ago. The bottle now nearly empty, but saved for occasions that mattered. This mattered. God, he needed this to matter. Can I start you with something to drink? A waiter appeared, pad in hand. Just water for now, Ryan said, waiting for someone. Of course, I'll bring 2 glasses. The waiter disappeared. Ryan checked his phone again, 7:31 p.m. He opened the message thread and typed, Got us a table by the window. Take your time. No rush. He hit send and waited. The read receipt appeared almost immediately, but no response came. At the table next to him, a woman sat alone with a laptop and a nearly untouched plate of pasta. She was probably in her early 40s, dressed in a charcoal blazer that looked expensive even to Ryan's untrained eye. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore glasses that caught the candlelight as she worked. She didn't look up when the waiter refilled her wine glass, didn't seem to notice the restaurant filling up around her. She existed in her own atmosphere of concentrated focus. Ryan looked away. He was staring. The last thing he needed was to look like some creep on a bad date, or worse, a man so desperate for company he'd gawk at strangers. 7:45 p.m. Ryan's water glass was empty. The waiter had circled back twice, each time with a more sympathetic expression. Around him, other diners were receiving their entrees, the restaurant hitting its evening rhythm. His stomach growled quietly. He'd skipped lunch to save money, planning to make this meal count. He pulled out his phone and typed, Everything okay? I'm at a table by the front window if you're having trouble finding me. This time the message sat unread for 3 full minutes. When the read receipt finally appeared, it was followed immediately by 3 dots indicating typing. Ryan's heart lifted. Jessica. Okay, real talk? I'm not coming. The words sat on his screen like a stain. Ryan stared at them, certain he'd misread. He blinked and looked again. Jessica. This was kind of a dare for my friends. We saw your profile, and honestly, you're not my type, like at all. But they bet me $100 I wouldn't have the guts to set something up. So here we are, lol. Ryan's hands went numb. The phone felt impossibly heavy. Jessica. No offense or whatever. You seem nice enough for a broke single dad. But, like, did you really think someone like me would be into that? I saw your profile pic. That jacket you're wearing looks like you bought it at Goodwill, because you probably did. LOL, Jessica. Anyway, thanks for being a good sport. Hope you didn't actually spend money getting there. That would be so sad. The emoji at the end was somehow worse than the words. Ryan's vision blurred. He set the phone face down on the table and pressed his palms flat against the checkered tablecloth, trying to ground himself, trying to remember how to breathe in a way that didn't sound like drowning. He was in public. He was visible. People could see him. The humiliation was a physical thing crawling up his neck, spreading across his face in a heat that had nothing to do with the restaurant's temperature. Every laugh from nearby tables felt aimed at him. Every glance from passing waiters felt like pity. He was the man sitting alone by the window, the man who'd been stupid enough to believe something good might finally happen. Ryan's throat constricted. He hadn't cried since the funeral, hadn't let himself break because Lily needed him solid and present and okay. But here, now, with his last $50 burning a hole in his wallet and the echo of cruel laughter ringing in his ears, he felt the foundations cracking. The waiter approached again. Sir, have you decided, I'm fine. Ryan's voice came out rougher than intended. Still waiting. The lie was transparent. They both knew it. The waiter nodded anyway and retreated, and Ryan was grateful for the mercy of pretending. His phone buzzed again. Jessica. Oh, and if you're sitting there wondering if it's real, it is. My friends want proof, so smile. Attached was a screenshot of their entire conversation, obviously prepared to be shared, weaponized. Below it, another message. Jessica. Don't be mad. You'll find someone desperate enough eventually. Just maybe try to have more than $50 to your name first. Women can smell broke. Trust me. Ryan's hand shook as he turned the phone completely off. Not just locked, off. Because if he looked at another message, if he saw another emoji mocking the fact that he dared to hope, he was going to fall apart completely. He'd taken a personal day from the warehouse for this. Had paid Mrs. Chen next door $20 to watch Lily for 3 hours. Money they needed for groceries. Had stopped at the drugstore to buy the cheap cologne because the good bottle was finally empty. Had practiced conversation starters in the bathroom mirror while Lily ate cereal for dinner because it was all he had time to make. All of it for a dare. For entertainment. For a $100 bet and screenshot-worthy proof that men like him, good men, trying men, men who worked 60-hour weeks and still came home to read bedtime stories, were fundamentally laughable. Daddy said you're very pretty. Lily's voice echoed in his memory from that morning when she'd seen him getting ready. Is she nice? I hope so, baby girl, he'd answered, meaning it with everything he had. Now he sat in a restaurant full of people who had someone, surrounded by the evidence of his own stupidity, with $50 he couldn't afford to spend burning through his pocket. The waiter was watching him from across the room. The hostess kept glancing over with poorly concealed concern. And at the next table, though Ryan didn't notice, the woman with the laptop had stopped typing entirely. Miranda Steele had heard the phone buzz repeatedly, had noticed the way the man's posture changed with each notification. Hope to confusion to something that looked like physical pain. She'd seen him turn the phone off with trembling hands and stare at the table like he was trying to disappear into it. She'd witnessed the exact moment a human being broke in public while pretending to be fine. Miranda had built a career on reading people, on noticing what others missed, on understanding that the most important business happened in the spaces between words. And right now, every professional instinct she'd honed over 15 years was screaming that something deeply wrong had just occurred at the table beside her. The man, mid-30s, clean but worn, hands that spoke of manual labor, sat utterly still. His jaw was clenched tight enough that Miranda could see the muscle jumping. His eyes were fixed on the window, but he wasn't seeing the street or the snow. He was somewhere else entirely, somewhere that hurt. Miranda knew that look. She'd seen it in the mirror during her divorce 7 years ago, when her ex-husband's infidelity had been exposed at a company dinner, and she'd had to sit through dessert pretending her entire world wasn't collapsing. She'd seen it again in the faces of workers she'd interviewed when researching workplace dignity for her company's expansion into fair trade partnerships. The look of someone trying to hold together what had already shattered. The waiter approached the man's table again. "Sir, I'm sorry, but if you're not ordering, I understand." The man's voice was barely audible. "Just give me 1 minute." He pulled out his wallet and extracted several bills with the careful precision of someone counting limited resources. Miranda watched him lay them on the table, 2 20s and a 10, and stand up. He didn't just leave, he fled. Fast enough that his chair scraped loudly against the floor, fast enough that other diners looked up, fast enough that Miranda knew he was about 3 seconds away from breaking down completely and desperately needed not to do it here. The waiter picked up the money, frowning. "He didn't order anything." The hostess appeared. "That's so strange. He seemed genuinely excited when he came in." "Probably got ghosted," the waiter said, pocketing the money for the house. "Happens all the time now. People are brutal with those dating apps." They moved away, already forgetting. The restaurant's rhythm continued uninterrupted. Someone laughed at the bar. A couple clinked glasses in celebration. Life went on for everyone except the man who'd just left $50 he clearly needed on a table because he'd been too destroyed to ask for change. Miranda stared at the empty chair, then at her laptop screen where she'd been reviewing quarterly reports. Numbers that represented millions of dollars in organic produce distribution, in sustainable farming partnerships, and profit margins that let her sleep at night knowing her company did well by doing good. She'd built Steel Harvest Group from the ground up after her divorce, channeling rage and betrayal into something purposeful. She'd created jobs, established fair wage practices, and made a fortune proving that ethical business wasn't an oxymoron. She was featured in business magazines. She gave TED Talks about conscious capitalism. She'd won awards for corporate responsibility. But when had she last actually seen someone who needed help? Not a statistical demographic or a policy discussion, but a specific human being in immediate pain? The memory of the man's face, the careful hope dissolving into humiliation, lodged somewhere in Miranda's chest and wouldn't dislodge. "Excuse me." She flagged down the waiter. "That man who just left, did he order anything?" The waiter shook his head. "Just water. Left money for the trouble, though. Nice guy, I guess. Just unlucky." "Unlucky," Miranda repeated softly. She looked at the $50 sitting on the bar where the waiter had left it for the manager. Looked at her own barely touched pasta. Looked at the window where snow was falling harder now, and the street beyond where a lonely figure in a thin jacket was probably walking toward a bus stop because men with $50 to their name didn't have cars. Miranda Steele had spent 7 years building walls between herself and vulnerability, had learned to trust numbers instead of people, data instead of instinct, profit margins instead of emotional impulses. She'd made herself powerful by making herself untouchable. But something about that man's careful dignity, the way he'd tried so hard to make it through with his pride intact, had slipped through every defense she'd constructed. She closed her laptop with a soft click. "Change of plans," she said to the waiter. "I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it exactly as I say." Outside, Ryan walked without destination, just movement to keep ahead of the breakdown chasing him down Boston's winter streets. The cold that had felt sharp earlier now felt like nothing. He was numb from the inside out, insulated by humiliation so complete it rendered physical discomfort irrelevant. His hands were shoved deep in his jacket pockets. His shoulders hunched against wind he barely felt. His mind looped through the messages, each review adding fresh layers of shame. Did you really think someone like me would be into that? The question rattled around his skull. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that no, he hadn't really believed it. Not deep down. He'd known he was punching above his weight, hoping for a miracle, trying to convince himself that maybe, possibly, someone might see past the warehouse work and the threadbare jacket and the complete lack of a financial safety net. He'd known. And he'd hoped anyway. That was what made him a fool. Ryan's phone vibrated in his pocket. Probably Mrs. Chen checking when he'd be home. He ignored it. He'd paid for 3 hours and had used barely 90 minutes. She'd understand if he walked a while longer. She'd seen him on bad days before, had probably guessed that the carefully pressed shirt and nervous energy meant tonight mattered more than he'd admitted. The streets of downtown Boston were alive with Friday night energy. Young professionals spilling out of bars, couples walking hand in hand toward movie theaters, groups of college students laughing in clusters outside restaurants Ryan couldn't afford, even on his best months. He was a ghost moving through their world, present but invisible, relevant to no one. A bus hissed to a stop at a red light beside him. Through the lit windows, Ryan saw a man in a suit talking animatedly on a phone. Saw a teenager with headphones, nodding to music Ryan couldn't hear. Saw an elderly woman clutching shopping bags and staring at nothing. All these people with places to go, people to see, lives that had momentum. Ryan had a daughter who deserved better than a father who couldn't even afford to take her for ice cream without budgeting for it, who worked doubles at the warehouse and still came up short on rent, who thought a $50 date at a mid-range Italian place was an investment in their future. Women can smell broke. Trust me. He stopped walking. Just stopped, right there on the sidewalk with snow accumulating in his hair, and let himself feel the full weight of how badly he'd failed at everything except keeping Lily fed. Being her dad wasn't enough. He knew that. She needed more than bedtime stories and macaroni dinners. She needed stability. She needed opportunities. She needed a father who could give her the childhood his late wife had dreamed of for her. The piano lessons Lily mentioned wistfully, the summer camps other kids attended, the college fund that should have existed by now, but didn't because medical bills from his wife's cancer had devoured every penny of their savings and then kept eating. Ryan was 34 years old and had nothing to show for it except calluses, a rented apartment with leaking pipes, and a daughter who deserved the moon but got a father who couldn't even get through a fake date without falling apart. His phone vibrated again. This time he pulled it out. Mrs. Chen. Lily is sleeping. Take your time. You deserve good evening. The kindness in those words, the assumption that he deserved anything good, nearly finished him. Ryan typed back, "On my way home. Thank you." He turned toward the bus stop, toward the 40-minute ride to their neighborhood, toward the walk from the bus to their apartment, toward the moment when he'd have to pay Mrs. Chen and smile and pretend the evening had been fine, toward the rest of his life, which stretched ahead in a flat line of sameness. Work, bills, worry, repeat. The restaurant was 3 blocks behind him now. He didn't see the woman in the charcoal blazer step outside and scan the street. Didn't see her make a decision that would alter the trajectory of everything. Miranda stood on the restaurant's front step and watched the man's distant figure disappear into the Friday night crowd. She'd hesitated, which she never did, because approaching a stranger on the street felt like something that could go wrong in a dozen ways. But she'd also just watched someone leave money he couldn't spare because he'd been too broken to function properly. Had watched dignity trump practicality in real time. And Miranda understood that particular sacrifice with a clarity that made her chest ache. During her divorce, when her ex-husband's lawyers had tried to use her emotional instability against her, Miranda had shown up to every deposition in perfect suits with perfect composure, had let them imply she was cold, was difficult, was the reason for the marriage's failure, had paid thousands to lawyers to fight battles she'd already lost emotionally just so she wouldn't give her ex the satisfaction of seeing her collapse. She knew what it cost to choose pride over practicality, to hold yourself together in public even as you disintegrated privately. The waiter appeared beside her. "Ms. Steele, did you need something?" Miranda turned back toward the warmth of the restaurant, made herself walk inside instead of chasing a stranger down snowy streets. "Yes, I need you to prepare a to-go order." "Of course. What would you like?" Miranda thought about the $50, about a man careful enough to bring exactly what he could afford, about the calculated risk of a meal that probably represented a sacrifice he'd made willingly. "The chicken marsala," she said, "with the house salad and garlic bread, and—" she paused, considering. "Add the tiramisu. Box it all properly so it travels well." The waiter made notes. "Anything else?" "No, just—" Miranda stopped herself from over-explaining, a habit she'd broken years ago in boardrooms where every word was ammunition. "Make sure it's hot. This is for someone who needs a good meal. She returned to her table and opened her laptop without seeing it. The quarterly reports she'd been reviewing suddenly felt obscene in their abstraction. Millions of dollars in organic produce moving through supply chains, all presented as clean numbers without the human mess that made those numbers matter. Miranda had gotten into the food business because of her grandmother, a woman who'd fled poverty in Italy and built a small grocery in South Boston through sheer force of will. Nonna Steele had fed half the neighborhood during the lean years, extending credit she'd never collected, slipping extra food into bags, believing that hunger was a dignity issue more than an economic one. People need to eat with their heads up, not their heads down, Nonna used to say in her thick accent. You give someone food with shame attached, you poison it. You give it with respect. You feed more than the stomach. When Miranda had started Steele Harvest Group, she'd built it on those principles. Fair wages, dignified working conditions, partnerships that valued farmers as collaborators rather than resources to exploit. She'd proven you could be profitable and principled. But when had she last operated at the individual level? When had she last seen a single person who needed help and just helped? The waiter returned with a large bag. All set. That'll be $42. Miranda handed over her credit card and added a generous tip. When the transaction completed, she stood and gathered her things, then picked up the bag. It was warm in her hands, substantial. A real meal. The kind that could make someone feel seen. She walked to the table where the man had sat. His $50 were gone now, absorbed into the restaurant's nightly take. But his phone sat face down on the chair, forgotten in his rush to escape. Miranda picked it up. The case was cracked but clean. A photo was tucked behind the clear backing, a little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile, holding a drawing of a family. Stick figures labeled Me and Daddy. And in smaller letters that broke Miranda's heart, Mommy in Heaven. This man had a daughter. This man had lost his wife. And someone had just shredded what little hope he'd carried into this evening for sport. Miranda's jaw tightened. She pocketed the phone and walked outside. The street was darker now, the dinner crowd thinning. Snow fell steadily. Miranda scanned for the thin jacket, the hunched shoulders, the distinctive gait of someone trying to outrun their own thoughts. There, half a block down, at the bus stop, illuminated by the shelter's fluorescent light, Miranda started walking before she could second-guess herself. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk. The bag swung gently at her side, and with each step, she became more certain this wasn't a mistake. She'd spent 7 years protecting herself from vulnerability, from trusting the wrong people, from being hurt. But protection and isolation weren't the same thing, and there was a difference between guarding your heart and forgetting it existed. Ryan sat on the cold bench inside the bus shelter and stared at the schedule posted on the plexiglass. The next bus came in 12 minutes. After that, he'd ride for 40 minutes through neighborhoods that got progressively rougher until he reached his stop 3 blocks from the apartment. Then he'd walk home, pay Mrs. Chen, check on Lily, and try to sleep without replaying every mistake he'd made tonight. 12 minutes felt like an eternity. Other people filtered in and out of the shelter. A woman with grocery bags, 2 teenagers arguing about video games, an old man who smelled like cigarette smoke and regret. None of them looked at Ryan. He was background scenery, as invisible as he felt. His phone buzzed in his pocket again. Ryan reached for it automatically, then froze. His hand came up empty. His phone. Where was his phone? Panic spiked through him, sharp and immediate. He checked his other pocket, checked his jacket, patted himself down with increasing urgency because that phone was his lifeline to Lily, to Mrs. Chen, to the warehouse manager who sent his schedule via text, to every practical piece of infrastructure that held his life together. No. He must have left it at the restaurant. In his rush to escape, he'd abandoned the one thing he absolutely couldn't afford to replace. A used smartphone might cost $150. Money he didn't have. Money that was supposed to go toward Lily's winter boots because hers were getting too small and the forecast called for snow through March. Ryan's hands shook. This day had officially crossed from humiliating into catastrophic. He stood up, ready to run back to the restaurant when he saw her. A woman in a charcoal blazer walked toward the bus stop with a paper bag in one hand and Ryan's phone in the other. She moved with the kind of confidence that made people step aside instinctively, not aggressive, just certain. Her dark hair was coming loose from its bun, small tendrils escaping into the snowy night. Her glasses reflected the streetlights. She was the woman from the next table, the one who'd been working through dinner. Ryan's stomach dropped. She'd been close enough to hear the whole thing, close enough to see him fall apart, close enough to know exactly what kind of pathetic situation he'd just endured. The humiliation, which he'd thought couldn't possibly deepen, found new depths. "I believe this is yours." She stopped a respectful distance away and held out the phone. Her voice was calm, professional, the kind that belonged in boardrooms. "You left it at your table." Ryan took it with numb fingers. "Thank you, His throat closed around words. "I'm sorry if I disturbed your dinner." "You didn't." She adjusted her grip on the bag. "But I did notice you didn't eat, so I thought—" She held out the bag. Ryan stared at it like it might bite him. The smell of garlic and herbs wafted through the paper. His stomach clenched painfully. He hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch break, had been saving his appetite for the date that never happened. But this was worse than the text messages. This was pity from a stranger who'd witnessed his worst moment. This was charity, dressed up as kindness. "I can't accept that." His voice came out harder than intended. I don't need—" "I'm sure you don't." The woman's expression didn't change. "But I ordered too much and I'm heading home. It'll go to waste otherwise. And I'm told the chicken marsala here is exceptional, though I've never tried it." It was smoothly done. She was giving him an out, a way to accept without admitting need. Ryan recognized the manipulation even through his fog of exhaustion and shame. "You don't have to do this." "I'm aware." She stepped closer and set the bag on the bench beside him. "But I'm going to anyway. Because you deserve to eat dinner and because what happened in there," she gestured toward the restaurant, "was cruel. And you handled it with more grace than it deserved." Ryan's throat tightened dangerously. "You don't know what happened." "I know enough." Her voice gentled slightly. "I know someone hurt you. I know you were kind to the staff even when you were clearly devastated. And I know you left money for a meal you never ate because you didn't want to cause trouble." The accuracy of her observations made Ryan's chest constrict. She'd seen everything. Every moment of his humiliation had played out in front of a witness who'd absorbed details he didn't know he'd broadcast. "Why?" The question came out raw. "Why would you do this?" The woman was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, something in her voice shifted, became less polished, more real. "Because 7 years ago, I sat in a restaurant not unlike this one while my husband told me he was leaving me for his assistant. And I had to finish my meal and smile at other diners and pretend my entire life wasn't imploding. And not one person noticed. Or if they did, no one cared enough to acknowledge it." She met his eyes directly. "I noticed you. And I'm acknowledging that what happened was wrong. That's all." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. Didn't have words for the strange intimacy of shared humiliation from a stranger who somehow understood. The bus pulled up with a hydraulic hiss. The doors opened. The woman stepped back. "The tiramisu is at the bottom," she said. "Don't let it tip." Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking into the snowy night, leaving Ryan holding a bag of food that smelled like every comfort he'd been denied and a phone that contained evidence of his worst evening in recent memory. The bus driver called out, "You coming or not?" Ryan grabbed the bag and climbed on board, found a seat near the back, set the food carefully on his lap. For 12 blocks, he stared at the bag without opening it. His mind spun through the encounter, trying to make sense of a stranger's kindness that felt too deliberate to be random. She'd noticed him, had seen him breaking, and instead of looking away, which would have been easier, which would have been what everyone else did, she'd done something about it. Ryan's hands trembled as he finally opened the bag. Inside was a full meal, still steaming, chicken marsala that looked restaurant quality, fresh bread that released the scent of garlic and butter, a salad with real vegetables, not the iceberg lettuce he bought on sale, and beneath it all, wrapped carefully, a slice of tiramisu that probably cost more than his usual lunch budget. This wasn't leftovers. This was a meal someone had ordered for him, had paid for, had delivered with the kind of tact that preserved his dignity, even in charity. Ryan's eyes burned. He blinked hard and took a bite of the chicken, It was perfect, tender and rich, and exactly what his body needed after a day of physical labor and emotional devastation. He ate slowly, making it last, watching Boston scroll past the bus windows. Each bite felt like a small act of rebellion against the voice in his head that said he didn't deserve this, that said men like him, broke, alone, fundamentally unworthy, didn't get to be seen by women in expensive blazers who had better things to do than rescue strangers from public humiliation. But it had happened. Despite every message his day had sent about his value, a stranger had looked at him and decided he mattered enough to help. Ryan pulled out his phone and stared at the dark screen. He should delete the dating app, should accept that this wasn't his path forward, should focus on Lily and work and getting through each day without reaching for more than he could hold. But the woman's words echoed. What happened in there was cruel, and you handled it with more grace than it deserved. He hadn't felt graceful. He'd felt destroyed. But maybe grace wasn't about how you felt. Maybe it was about what you did when feeling became unbearable, but you kept going anyway. The bus reached his stop. Ryan gathered the bag, now significantly lighter, and stepped off into his neighborhood. The streets here were darker, the buildings older, but 3 blocks away, a light glowed in his apartment window where Mrs. Chen waited and Lily slept, and that light was everything that mattered. He walked toward home with a full stomach and a stranger's kindness warming him more than his thin jacket ever could. And though he didn't know it yet, Miranda Steele stood at her own window across town, looking out at the Boston skyline and thinking about a man in a bus shelter who'd said thank you like it cost him something. They were both thinking the same thing, separated by miles and circumstances, but connected by a moment of genuine human recognition. What happens next? Ryan's apartment was quiet when he let himself in, careful not to let the door creak. Mrs. Chen sat in the worn armchair by the window, knitting needles moving in a steady rhythm that suggested she'd been waiting without boredom. She looked up as he entered, her weathered face creasing into a smile that faded slightly when she read his expression. "Lily has been angel," she said in her accented English, setting down the knitting. "She asked about you twice, then sleep like stone. I checked on her 10 minutes ago." Ryan pulled out his wallet and counted out the $20 he'd promised, then added an extra $5. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. I really appreciate you staying." She waved away the extra bill. No, 20 is what we say. You keep for Lily." "Please, you stayed later than we planned." Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed with the particular perception of elderly women who've seen enough life to recognize suffering in a young man's shoulders. "Your evening was not good." It wasn't a question. Ryan tried to smile anyway. "It was fine, just not what I expected." Expectations are a funny thing. She took the 20 and left the 5 on the coffee table. Sometimes bad surprise becomes good story later. You see? She patted his arm with maternal certainty and let herself out, her slippers shuffling in the hallway. Ryan locked the door behind her and stood in the silence of his home. The apartment was small, a 1-bedroom where Lily slept while he took the couch, but it was clean and warm. Drawings covered the refrigerator in a riot of crayon colors. Library books were stacked neatly on the coffee table. A basket of folded laundry sat waiting to be put away, evidence of the Sunday afternoon he'd spent at the laundromat instead of resting. This was his life, small and careful and filled with love even when it felt like drowning. He moved quietly to the bedroom door and eased it open. Lily lay curled under her pink comforter, dark hair splayed across the pillow in tangles that would take patient work to brush out in the morning. Her breathing was deep and even. One small hand clutched Mr. Bear, the stuffed animal that had belonged to her mother. Ryan's chest constricted. She looked so much like Emma at that age. The photographs from his late wife's childhood showed the same delicate features, the same way of sleeping with one knee drawn up. Lily was 6 now, and sometimes Ryan would catch expressions on her face that were pure Emma, the way she concentrated when drawing, the tilt of her head when listening to music, the fierce determination when she'd decided something mattered. She deserved so much more than he could give her. Ryan closed the door softly and returned to the living room. The paper bag from the restaurant sat on the counter where he'd left it. He pulled out the tiramisu container and opened it. The dessert was beautiful, layers of coffee-soaked ladyfingers and mascarpone cream dusted with cocoa powder. He'd eaten half his meal on the bus, suddenly starving, but had saved this specifically because Lily loved anything sweet, and they couldn't usually afford desserts beyond the discount cookies from the grocery store. He put it in the refrigerator for tomorrow. A small gift she wouldn't know had come from a stranger's kindness. Then he pulled out his phone and finally looked at the messages that had destroyed his evening. Jessica's profile was already gone. Deleted or blocked, he couldn't tell which. The conversation thread remained like evidence of a crime scene, each message a small violence. Ryan deleted the entire thread. Then he opened the dating app and stared at his profile. The photo Lily had insisted on taking, where he was smiling at something she'd said off camera, the carefully written bio that tried to be honest without being desperate. The preferences he'd selected hoping to find someone who might understand that his life came with complications. His thumb hovered over the delete button. People need to eat with their heads up, not their heads down. The woman from the restaurant had said something similar, though not in those words. She'd given him food with respect attached, not pity, had acknowledged his pain without making him smaller for feeling it. Ryan set down the phone without deleting anything. He was too tired for big decisions, too raw to know what he actually wanted versus what fear was telling him to do. He unfolded the couch into its bed configuration, a process that required specific angles and force. The sheets were clean, if worn thin. His alarm was set for 5:30 because Saturday warehouse shifts started at 6:30 and the bus ride took 40 minutes. But sleep didn't come easily. Ryan lay in the dark and thought about blazers that cost more than his rent, and strangers who noticed when you were drowning, and the strange mercy of being seen at your worst by someone who treated you like you still deserved dignity. Across town, in a brownstone worth more than Ryan would earn in 5 years, Miranda Steele stood at her kitchen counter and made tea she wouldn't drink. Her laptop was open to quarterly projections she couldn't focus on. Her phone sat silent because she had hundreds of contacts, but no one she wanted to call at 11 o'clock on a Friday night to discuss the strange, hollow feeling in her chest. She'd done the right thing. She was certain of that. The man had needed help, and she'd provided it in a way that preserved his autonomy. Clean, professional. The kind of intervention her grandmother would have approved of. So why did she feel like she'd left something unfinished? Miranda abandoned the tea and moved to her living room window. Boston glittered below, all lights and movement, and lives being lived in apartments and bars and restaurants. Somewhere in that sprawl, a man was probably wondering why a stranger had helped him, probably suspicious of her motives because kindness between strangers had become so rare it registered as threat. She understood that. Had her own walls built high enough that genuine connection felt dangerous. Her ex-husband's betrayal had been public, conducted with his assistant at company events where colleagues had known before Miranda did. The divorce had been ugly, and Miranda had channeled her rage into building something he could never touch. Steel Harvest Group was hers alone. Her vision, her values, her success. She'd proven she didn't need him or anyone. But success that protected you from vulnerability also isolated you from connection. Miranda had acquaintances, business partners, employees she respected. She didn't have friends, not real ones. Not the kind who'd notice if she disappeared for a week. She'd become the kind of person who worked through dinner in restaurants, who measured achievement in profit margins, who'd forgotten what it felt like to make eye contact with another human being and see recognition instead of calculation. Until tonight. Until a man in a thin jacket had looked at her, offered kindness with suspicion and pain, and something that might have been desperate hope, and she'd remembered what it felt like to matter to someone in the moment. To be the person who showed up when showing up meant something. Miranda returned to her laptop and pulled up the security footage from Steel Harvest's downtown distribution center. This was her ritual, checking the overnight operations, ensuring protocols were followed, maintaining the control that had built her empire. But tonight the footage felt hollow. Workers moving boxes with efficient precision, forklifts navigating warehouse aisles. All of it optimized and profitable, and utterly devoid of the human moment she'd experienced at the bus stop when a stranger had said thank you, like she'd given him something more valuable than food. She needed to stop thinking about it, needed to file it under good deed done and move on. Instead, she found herself wondering if he'd eaten the tiramisu, if his daughter, because the phone case had clearly shown a daughter, would share it with him. If he'd gone home to someone who'd asked about his evening, and if he'd told the truth about how badly it had gone. Miranda closed the laptop with more force than necessary and went to bed, where she lay awake thinking about bus stops and cheap cell phone cases and the specific loneliness of watching someone break while pretending they were fine. Saturday morning arrived with winter sunlight that made the snow on Boston's streets look clean instead of gray. Ryan woke to his alarm at 5:30, showered quickly in water that never quite got hot enough, and dressed for the warehouse in clothes that smelled faintly of the industrial detergent from the laundromat. Lily was still asleep. He left a note on her pillow. "Good morning, baby girl. Tiramisu in the fridge for breakfast treat. Be good for Mrs. Chen. Love you forever, Daddy," and let himself out quietly. The bus was nearly empty at this hour. Ryan sat in his usual spot and watched the city wake up. His body ached in the familiar ways, lower back tight from loading pallets, shoulders sore from repetitive motion, hands stiff from gripping box cutters and tape guns for 10-hour shifts. He was 34 and felt 50. This was his future unless something changed. Years of physical labor until his body gave out, always one injury away from catastrophe, always one unexpected expense away from eviction. The warehouse was exactly as he'd left it Friday afternoon. Concrete floors and metal shelving that stretched 3 stories high, the smell of cardboard and diesel from the forklifts, the constant beeping of equipment and shouting of workers coordinating loads. Ryan clocked in and found his station. His supervisor, Marcus, was a decent guy who didn't ride people unnecessarily, but also didn't tolerate mistakes. "Mercer, you're on receiving today. Miller called out sick, so we're short." "Got it." Ryan grabbed a scanner and headed to the loading dock where trucks were already backing up with deliveries that needed to be checked, sorted, and shelved before the Monday rush. The work was mindless in the way that let thoughts spiral. Ryan's hands moved automatically. Scan barcode, check against manifest, stack on appropriate pallet, while his brain replayed Friday night in excruciating detail. He should have known better, should have recognized the too-good-to-be-true quality of a woman who looked like Jessica's profile picture agreeing to meet a warehouse worker with a kid, should have protected himself better, but he'd wanted to believe, and that wanting had made him stupid. "Hey, Mercer. You all right?" Marcus appeared beside him with a clipboard. "You just scanned that same box 3 times. Ryan blinked and looked down. He'd been staring at a box of automotive parts without seeing it. "Sorry, didn't sleep well." "Join the club." Marcus made a note on his clipboard. "You need a break. Take 5. But we've got 6 trucks to clear before noon, so if you're here, I need you present." "I'm good. Won't happen again." Marcus studied him for a moment with the assessment of someone who'd managed warehouse crews long enough to recognize when a worker was struggling. "Your kid okay?" "Lily's fine. It's just—" Ryan trailed off. What could he say? That he'd been humiliated on a fake date and a stranger's kindness had somehow made it worse by highlighting how desperately he needed help? Personal stuff. Doesn't matter. It matters if it affects your safety. You're working around forklifts and loading equipment. Can't have you distracted. "I understand. I'll focus." Marcus nodded and moved on, but Ryan felt the warning clearly. Jobs like this were precarious. Plenty of guys waiting for his shift if he couldn't handle it. The warehouse didn't care about personal problems. It cared about productivity and safety metrics and keeping inventory moving. Ryan forced himself to concentrate. Scan, check, stack. Scan, check, stack. The rhythm was meditative if you let it be. His body settled into the work. His mind finally quieted. By lunch break, he'd processed 4 trucks worth of inventory without error. He bought a coffee from the vending machine, the good kind, not the watered-down stuff, and sat in the break room with guys who talked about sports and complained about their wives and showed photos of fishing trips Ryan couldn't afford to take. He was invisible here, too. Not in a bad way, just in the way of someone who didn't have stories worth sharing. The other guys had boats and season tickets and weekend plans. Ryan had a daughter and a couch and a careful budget that didn't include extras. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. "Lily asks if you come home for lunch. I tell her you work. She is sad but okay. The dessert made her very happy." Ryan smiled at his phone, the first genuine smile since Friday evening. Lily's happiness was uncomplicated and freely given. She didn't care that the tiramisu had come from charity. She just knew it was delicious and that her daddy had thought of her. He typed back, Tell her I love her and I'll be home by 5. We can go to the library tonight if she wants. The library was their weekend ritual, free entertainment that Lily loved. She'd discovered the children's section last year and now treated it like her personal treasure trove. Books about animals, about faraway places, about kids having adventures Lily could only dream of having herself. Emma had loved to read, had talked about the books she'd share with their daughter someday, the worlds they'd explore together. Ryan tried to make good on that promise every Saturday evening, walking Lily through the library while she selected her weekly stack with intense concentration. It wasn't music lessons or summer camp, but it was something. The afternoon shift was harder. Ryan's body was tired and his mind wanted to wander. He forced himself through 3 more trucks, checked his watch obsessively starting at 4 o'clock, and clocked out at 5 sharp. The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Ryan watched Boston slide past and thought about Sunday stretching ahead. Laundry, grocery shopping with coupons carefully clipped from the newspaper, maybe the playground if the weather held. Small domestic tasks that filled time without providing the kind of life momentum he desperately needed. Lily was watching for him from the window. He saw her face light up when she spotted him on the sidewalk, saw her disappear from view, and knew she was running to the door. By the time he climbed the stairs, she was already in the hallway. "Daddy!" She launched herself at him with the full-body enthusiasm of 6-year-olds. "You're home!" Ryan caught her and lifted her up despite his tired back. She was getting heavy, growing so fast he could barely keep up with buying clothes that fit. "Hey, baby girl, did you have a good day? Mrs. Chen taught me to knit. Look!" She wriggled down and ran back into the apartment, returning with a lumpy square of yarn in determined stitches. "It's going to be a blanket for Mr. Bear." "That's beautiful, Lily. You're very talented." Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. "She has good hands, patient, like her mama was, I think." Ryan's throat tightened. "Yeah, like Emma." Mrs. Chen squeezed his shoulder with weathered understanding. "I go now. You have good weekend with your girl." She left them alone. Lily grabbed Ryan's hand and pulled him inside, chattering about her day. The dessert that was the best thing ever. The squirrel she'd watched from the window. The book Mrs. Chen had read to her about a princess who saved herself instead of waiting for a prince. Ryan let her words wash over him, let himself exist in this moment where he was simply daddy, and that was enough. He made them dinner, spaghetti with jarred sauce and frozen meatballs, garlic bread from the day-old bakery section, and they ate at their small table while Lily told him elaborate stories about the invisible kingdom under her bed, where the dust bunnies were actually tiny dragons. "And they can only be seen by special people," she explained seriously. "Like me and you, because we have magic hearts." "Magic hearts, huh? Where'd you learn about that?" "I just know." Lily twirled spaghetti on her fork with careful concentration. "Daddy, was your date nice?" Ryan's hand froze halfway to his mouth. He'd hoped she'd forgotten about Friday. "What made you think about that?" "Mrs. Chen said you looked sad when you came home. She said sometimes dates don't work out, but that doesn't mean you should stop trying." Ryan set down his fork carefully. "Mrs. Chen says a lot of things. She's really smart, though." Lily looked at him with Emma's eyes, dark and perceptive and seeing more than a 6-year-old should have to see. "Are you sad? How did you explain adult disappointment to a child who still believed in dust bunny dragons? How did you admit that sometimes the world was cruel without stealing her innocence?" "I'm not sad," Ryan said, which was technically true. He'd moved past sad into something more like resigned acceptance. The date didn't work out, but that's okay. Some things just aren't meant to be. "But you deserve nice things." Lily said it with such conviction that Ryan's heart cracked. "You're the best daddy. Someone should see that." "You see it. That's what matters to me." Lily considered this, then nodded. "Okay, but I still think someone nice should take you on a date. Someone who smells good and smiles a lot. Like that lady at the library who always helps me find books." "Mrs. Patterson is married, baby girl." "Not her. The other one. The younger one with the pretty hair." Ryan had no idea who she meant, but he smiled anyway. "I'll keep that in mind." They finished dinner and Ryan washed dishes while Lily played on the floor with her stuffed animals. creating elaborate scenarios involving rescue missions and tea parties. The apartment was warm. The evening stretched ahead with no demands beyond being present. This was enough. It had to be enough. At 7 o'clock, they bundled up for the library. The snow had stopped, but the cold remained. That particular February chill that promised winter wasn't finished yet. Lily held Ryan's hand as they walked the 4 blocks, skipping occasionally to test if the sidewalk was slippery enough for sliding. The public library was a beautiful old building with marble floors and high ceilings that made every sound echo. Lily loved the grandness of it, the way it felt important just to walk through the doors. She headed straight for the children's section, while Ryan followed at a more measured pace. The children's librarian, Mrs. Patterson, who was indeed married, waved at them. "Hi, Lily. Back for more books?" "Yes. Do you have anything about dragons? The nice kind, not the scary ones?" "I think we can find something. Let's look together." Ryan settled into one of the adult chairs near the children's section where he could watch Lily while she browsed. Other families dotted the area, parents with toddlers, an older couple helping a young boy with homework, a woman about Ryan's age reading to twin girls who hung on every word. Normal Saturday evening library scenes, people living ordinary lives that Ryan envied more than they could possibly know. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, Ryan. This is Miranda from the restaurant last night. I got your number from your phone's emergency contact screen. I hope that's not too intrusive. I wanted to make sure you made it home safely and that the meal was okay." Ryan stared at the screen. The woman from the restaurant, the stranger who'd helped him. She'd kept his number. He should probably be concerned about the privacy violation. Should maybe wonder why a woman who could afford $40 restaurant meals cared about whether a warehouse worker had made it home safely. Instead, he felt something uncomfortably close to hope stirring in his chest. He typed carefully. "Hi, Miranda. This is a surprise. Yes, I made it home fine. The meal was excellent. Thank you again for your kindness. You didn't have to do that." The response came quickly. "I know I didn't have to. I wanted to. And I was worried about you walking in the cold with a thin jacket. Did you at least take the bus?" "Yes, got home safe and warm." "Good. I'm glad. I hope the rest of your weekend is better than Friday night." Ryan hesitated, then typed, "It already is. My daughter loved the tiramisu. She said it was magical, so thank you for that too." A longer pause this time, then, "You're welcome. I hope you both enjoy the rest of your Saturday." The conversation should have ended there. Would have ended there, if Ryan had any sense of self-preservation. But something about the careful kindness in her messages, the way she'd phrased concern without condescension, made him brave. "Can I ask why you helped me? You don't know me. For all you know, I could be a terrible person who deserved what happened." The response took almost a minute. "Because I watched you try to keep your dignity in a situation designed to strip it away. Because you were kind to restaurant staff even when you were clearly suffering, and because sometimes we help people simply because they need help and we're able to give it. That's all the reason required." Ryan read the message 3 times. Something in his chest loosened, a knot he hadn't known was there releasing slightly. "Thank you," he typed. That means more than you probably realize." "You're welcome, Ryan. Take care of yourself and your daughter." The conversation ended there. Ryan pocketed his phone and looked up to find Lily approaching with a stack of books clutched to her chest. "Look what I found! Dragons and princesses!" She dumped the books in his lap with enthusiastic pride. "Can we get all of them?" Ryan checked the stack. 6 books. The library had a 10-book limit per card. "Absolutely. Let's go check them out." They walked home through February darkness with a tote bag full of library books, and Lily chattering about dragons who baked cookies instead of hoarding gold. Ryan half listened, his mind occupied with text messages from a stranger who'd somehow seen past his worst moment to something worth protecting. The world was mostly cruel. He knew that. Had evidence spanning years that proved people would use you, hurt you, dismiss you without thought. But every once in a while, maybe rarely enough to still matter, someone would surprise you. Would show up when you needed them most. Would remind you that dignity wasn't something that could be taken away. It was something you carried regardless of circumstances. Ryan didn't know what to do with that information yet. Didn't know if Miranda's kindness was a moment or the start of something more. But for the first time since Friday night, He felt like maybe being seen wasn't always a prelude to being hurt. Maybe sometimes it was just the first step toward being known. That night, after Lily was asleep with a dragon book tucked beside her pillow, Ryan lay on his fold-out couch and reread Miranda's messages. The careful language, the respect embedded in every sentence, the acknowledgement that what had happened to him was wrong, said plainly without requiring him to perform gratitude. He saved her number in his contacts. Didn't know if he'd ever text her again. Didn't know if she expected him to or hoped he wouldn't. But having the option felt like possibility. And possibility, however small, was something Ryan hadn't felt in a very long time. Sunday morning brought the kind of gray sky that made staying in bed feel justified. Ryan woke to Lily climbing onto the fold-out couch, her cold feet finding his ribs with unerring accuracy. "Daddy, it's Pancake Day," she announced, as if this were a calendar holiday rather than their Sunday tradition. "Is it now?" Ryan squinted at the clock. 7:15. He'd slept later than usual, his body finally catching up on the exhaustion he'd been pushing through all week. "Yes, and I want to help make them this time. I'm big enough now." She was big enough. That was the problem. She kept growing, kept needing more, kept reminding him that childhood was temporary and he was running out of time to give her the foundation she deserved. They made pancakes together in their tiny kitchen, Lily standing on a chair to reach the counter while Ryan supervised her stirring technique. She was careful and focused, tongue poking out in concentration, the way Emma used to do when learning something new. The batter had lumps, but Lily was so proud of her work that Ryan praised it like she'd created something extraordinary. They ate at their small table, syrup dripping onto plates that didn't match because Ryan had bought them piecemeal from thrift stores. Lily talked about the dragon book she'd started last night, how the main character was a girl who trained dragons instead of fighting them, how she wanted to be a dragon trainer when she grew up. "That's a great goal," Ryan said. "You'll need to study hard in school. Dragon training probably requires good grades." "I'm already good at school. Mrs. Kim says I'm one of her best readers." Pride swelled in Ryan's chest. Whatever else he was failing at, Lily was thriving academically. She loved learning with the kind of pure enthusiasm that hadn't yet been crushed by boredom or social pressures. "I'm very proud of you, baby girl." After breakfast, Ryan tackled the laundry while Lily played. Their building had a coin-operated washer and dryer in the basement that always smelled faintly of mildew and someone else's fabric softener. Ryan sorted clothes on the concrete floor, feeding quarters into machines that ate money without gratitude, and tried not to calculate how many loads of laundry he could have done with the $50 he'd left at the restaurant. His phone buzzed while he was transferring wet clothes to the dryer. Another text from Miranda. "I hope this isn't too forward, but I'm organizing a community nutrition workshop at my company next Saturday. It's about healthy eating on a budget, meal planning, that sort of thing. I immediately thought of you, not because of Friday, but because you have real-world experience that would be valuable to hear. Would you consider coming? There's a stipend for participants, and lunch is provided." Ryan stared at the message. A nutrition workshop. At her company. With a stipend. His first instinct was suspicion. This felt like charity dressed up as opportunity. His second instinct was curiosity about what stipend meant in terms of actual dollars. His third instinct was wondering why a CEO would think about a warehouse worker when organizing professional events. He typed, "What kind of stipend are we talking about?" $200 for attending and participating in a panel discussion. It's a 3-hour commitment on Saturday afternoon. The goal is to get real perspectives from people managing household budgets under financial constraints. Your voice would be incredibly valuable. $200. Ryan's hand stilled on the phone. That was almost a week's groceries. That was the money for Lily's winter boots with enough left over for something extra. That was tangible help disguised as participation. "Why me?" he typed. "You barely know me." "Because you're exactly who needs to be in these conversations. Most of the people at my company make 6 figures. They design programs and initiatives without understanding what it's actually like to choose between buying vegetables or buying meat because you can't afford both. I need honest voices. Yours qualifies." Ryan read the message twice, looking for condescension, found only directness that felt more respectful than any gentle phrasing could have been. She wasn't pretending this wasn't about money, wasn't dancing around the reality of his situation. "I'd have to bring my daughter," he typed. "I can't afford childcare on Saturdays." "We have childcare available at the office. Fully supervised, activities provided, snacks included. Lily's welcome." Of course, she'd remembered his daughter's name. Ryan didn't know if that was thoughtful or unsettling. "What's the catch?" "No catch. I need authentic perspectives for a program I'm developing. You need supplemental income. It's a fair exchange of value." But Ryan set down the phone and finished loading the dryer. His instincts warred with his practical needs. Accepting felt like admitting defeat, like confirming he was the charity case Friday night had made him feel like. But refusing meant turning down money that would materially improve Lily's life for the sake of pride that didn't pay bills. He picked up the phone and typed, "Okay, I'll do it. Send me the details. Thank you. You won't regret this." Ryan pocketed the phone and wondered if that was true. The week that followed had a strange quality of anticipation that Ryan couldn't quite shake. Work was work. The same trucks to unload, the same boxes to scan, the same aching body at day's end. But Wednesday afternoon, Marcus pulled him aside during break. "Hey Mercer, I need someone for Saturday overtime, 6 hours, time and a half. You interested?" Time and a half was $33 an hour instead of $22. 6 hours meant almost $200 before taxes. Exactly what he was already getting from Miranda's workshop. "I can't," Ryan said. "I've got a commitment." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "A commitment that pays better than overtime?" "Something like that." "Must be important. You never turn down Saturday shifts." It wasn't important in the way Marcus meant, but it was something different than the endless loop of warehouse, home, warehouse. And different had started to feel necessary, even if Ryan couldn't explain why. Friday evening, Ryan ironed his good shirt, the one without visible wear at the collar, and laid it out with his decent pants. Lily watched from the couch, clutching Mr. Bear. "Where are you going tomorrow?" she asked. "To help a lady with a work project, and you're coming with me. They have activities for kids while the grown-ups talk." "What kind of activities?" "I don't know yet, but I bet they'll be fun, and we'll get lunch there." Lily perked up at the mention of free food. She understood at 6 that free meals were special occasions. "Can I bring Mr. Bear?" "Absolutely, Mr. Bear is always welcome." That night, Ryan lay awake longer than usual. The workshop was at Steel Harvest Group headquarters in downtown Boston, a building he'd passed on buses without ever imagining he'd have reason to enter. Miranda had sent the address and floor number with instructions to check in at reception. He felt wildly out of his depth. These would be professional people with degrees and careers that had trajectories instead of survival strategies. They'd speak a language of quarterly projections and market analyses and all the business concepts Ryan had never learned because he'd gone straight from high school to the army to warehouse work. But $200 was $200. And Lily needed boots. Saturday arrived with winter sunlight that felt almost optimistic. Ryan and Lily took the bus downtown. Lily pressed against the window, watching Boston transform from their neighborhood's worn buildings to the gleaming towers of the financial district. She'd worn her favorite dress, purple with flowers, too thin for February, but important enough to her that Ryan had layered a sweater over it. Steel Harvest Group occupied floors 15 through 20 of a glass and steel building that probably cost more than every place Ryan had ever lived combined. The lobby was all marble and modern art, with a security desk manned by 2 guards who looked like they took their jobs seriously. Ryan approached with Lily's hand clasped tight in his. "Hi, I'm Ryan Mercer. I'm here for a workshop with Miranda Steele." The guard checked his computer. "ID, please." Ryan handed over his license, acutely aware of the photo that showed him 10 pounds heavier from before Emma died, before stress and single parenthood had carved him down to essential components. "You're all set. 15th floor, turn right off the elevators. Someone will meet you." The elevator was glass-walled, offering views of Boston as they rose. Lily pressed close to the glass, eyes wide. "Daddy, we're so high up." "We are. Pretty cool, right? It's like we're flying." The doors opened on the 15th floor to a reception area that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows, tasteful furniture in earth tones. A woman in a sleek black suit stood waiting. "Ryan, I'm Jessica Park, Miranda's assistant. Welcome." She smiled at Lily. "And you must be Lily. I love your dress." Lily beamed. "Thank you. It has pockets." "The best dresses always do. Why don't we get you set up in the kids' room first? We've got crafts and books and some other children here today." She led them down a hallway lined with photos of farms and farmers, diverse faces working in fields and greenhouses and farmers' markets. The kids' room was bright and cheerful, with several children already engaged in various activities under the supervision of two young women who radiated the particular patience of people who genuinely liked working with kids. "Will you be okay here?" Ryan asked Lily quietly. She was already eyeing the art supplies. "Yes, look, they have the good markers." Ryan knelt down to her level. "I'll be in a meeting room down the hall. If you need me for any reason, you tell one of these nice ladies and they'll get me immediately. Okay?" "Okay, Daddy." She kissed his cheek and turned toward the markers, already making friends with a little boy building blocks nearby. Jessica led Ryan back down the hallway to a conference room with a view that stretched to Boston Harbor. About 15 people were already seated around a long table, a mix of ages and races, but all carrying the particular polish of professionals who wore business casual like a second skin. Miranda stood at the head of the table, dressed in a navy blazer and cream blouse, her dark hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked up when Ryan entered, and her expression shifted to something that might have been relief. "Ryan, thank you for coming. Everyone, this is Ryan Mercer, one of our community participants today." Ryan took an empty seat, hyper-aware of every way he didn't fit. His shirt was clean but off the rack. His hands showed calluses and old scars from warehouse work. He was the only person at the table who looked like they did physical labor for a living. Miranda began the workshop with an overview of Steel Harvest Group's mission: sustainable farming, fair wages, community partnerships. She spoke with the kind of easy authority that came from knowing your subject completely. Then she shifted gears. "We're developing a program to make nutritious food more accessible in underserved communities. But we can't do that effectively if we're designing in a vacuum. That's why I've invited several community members to join us today, people who live the reality we're trying to address." She looked directly at Ryan. "Ryan, would you mind starting? Tell us about your experience with food accessibility." Every eye in the room turned to him. Ryan's mouth went dry. He hadn't prepared a speech, hadn't realized he'd be put on the spot like this. He cleared his throat. "I work at a warehouse, single dad. Food shopping means looking at unit prices and buying whatever's on sale, whether or not it's what I'd choose otherwise. Vegetables are expensive. The cheap stuff is filling, but not necessarily healthy. So you make trade-offs constantly. Can you give us a specific example?" Miranda's voice was gentle, encouraging. Ryan thought about last week's grocery trip. "My daughter loves strawberries. They were $6.99 for a small container, which is insane. But the generic mac and cheese was 3 boxes for $2. So I bought the mac and cheese and told myself the powdered cheese probably has calcium in it." A few people around the table shifted uncomfortably. Miranda nodded. "And how does that make you feel?" "Like I'm failing." The honesty escaped before Ryan could stop it. "Like I'm giving my kid food I know isn't good for her because it's what I can afford. Every parent at that grocery store buying organic produce and fresh fish makes me feel like I'm slowly poisoning my own child with what I feed her." The silence that followed felt heavy. Then a woman across the table spoke up, mid-50s, wearing expensive glasses. "That's exactly the guilt trap our current food system creates. You're not failing. The system is failing you." "Doesn't change what goes in my kid's lunchbox," Ryan said quietly. Miranda leaned forward. "What would change it? If money wasn't an issue, what would you buy?" Ryan didn't have to think hard. Fresh fruit, real vegetables instead of canned, chicken breasts instead of ground beef with 30% fat, whole grain bread instead of white, fish. My daughter's never had fresh fish because I can't afford it. "And if we could make those things accessible at the price point you need?" Miranda asked. "What would that look like logistically?" The conversation opened up from there. Ryan found himself talking about food deserts, about how the grocery store in his neighborhood charged more than the ones in wealthy areas, about how taking buses to cheaper stores meant you could only buy what you could carry, which limited options. The other community participants added their experiences: a single mother of 3, an elderly man on a fixed income, a college student working 2 jobs. The professionals at the table took notes frantically, asked questions that showed they genuinely didn't understand what life looked like at Ryan's income level. And Miranda orchestrated it all with the skill of someone who knew how to draw out truth without making people feel exposed. 2 hours passed before Ryan realized it. A catered lunch arrived: sandwiches and salads and fruit that looked nothing like the sad grocery store produce Ryan was used to. He ate carefully, aware of being watched, trying not to seem too hungry, even though warehouse mornings meant he was always hungry by noon. Miranda sat down beside him during lunch. "You're doing great. Thank you for being so honest. Feels more like therapy than work. The best insights usually do." She paused. "How's Lily doing?" She was happy when we arrived, probably having the time of her life with those art supplies. "We'll check on her after lunch. Jessica mentioned she's quite the artist." They ate in companionable silence for a moment. Then Miranda said quietly, "I meant what I said in my text. Your perspective is valuable, not because of your circumstances, but because of how you navigate them. That takes a kind of intelligence most people here will never develop." Ryan looked at her. She met his gaze steadily, no pity in her expression, just recognition of a truth she believed completely. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "The workshop, the stipend. You could have just written a check to a food bank and called it charity." "Because charity doesn't solve systemic problems. It just makes donors feel good while leaving the actual issues intact. I want to build something that works at scale, that requires understanding the problem from the inside out." She set down her sandwich. "My grandmother fed half of South Boston during the Depression. Not because she had money, but because she understood dignity was as important as nutrition. I'm trying to honor that." "Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She was. She'd have liked you." "How could you possibly know that?" Miranda smiled slightly. She had a radar for people who kept going even when everything was hard. Said those were the ones worth knowing. After lunch, they reconvened for the panel discussion Miranda had mentioned. This was more formal. Ryan sat at a table with the other community participants, while company employees asked questions about barriers to healthy eating, about what would actually help versus what sounded good in theory. Ryan found himself speaking with more confidence, talking about how food education didn't matter if you couldn't afford the ingredients recommended, about how time poverty was as real as money poverty. Working 60 hours a week left little energy for meal planning and prep. About how his daughter's school lunch was often her healthiest meal of the day, and what that said about their food system. At one point, a young man in expensive sneakers asked, "But don't you think better budgeting would solve a lot of these issues?" Ryan felt the room tense. He could have been polite, should have been polite, but the question revealed such profound ignorance that anger flickered through his carefully maintained composure. "Last month I had $73 for groceries," he said evenly. "That's for 2 people for a week. I'd love to hear your budgeting tips for that." The young man flushed. You meant that if we were smarter with money, we wouldn't struggle. But I'm extremely smart with money. I know the price per ounce of everything in my grocery store. I clip coupons and watch for sales and buy day-old bread. And it's still not enough. So maybe the question isn't about budgeting better. Maybe it's about how we've built a system where working full-time doesn't cover basic necessities." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Miranda spoke. "Thank you, Ryan. That's exactly the kind of honesty we need." The workshop ended at 3 o'clock. Miranda handed Ryan an envelope with his name on it. "The stipend, as promised. And Ryan, I'd like to stay in touch. Would you be willing to consult on this project as we develop it? Paid, of course, just occasional check-ins to make sure we're staying grounded in reality." Ryan held the envelope, feeling the weight of bills inside. "You're serious?" "Completely. Your input is worth compensating. Think about it and let me know." They collected Lily from the kids' room. She emerged covered in paint and glitter, clutching a picture she'd made. A family portrait with 3 stick figures labeled "Me, Daddy," and in heartbreaking purple crayon, "Mommy watching from sky." Ryan's throat closed. Miranda looked at the picture and then at Lily with something soft in her expression. "That's beautiful, Lily. Your mommy would be very proud of you.
You smell like her, Lily said suddenly with the blunt observation of children. Not exactly the same, but close, like flowers. Miranda knelt down to Lily's level. I wear jasmine perfume. Did your mommy wear something similar? Lily nodded. She smelled like flowers and cookies. Daddy says I'm not supposed to forget her smell. You won't, Miranda said gently. Smells have a way of staying with us. She stood and caught Ryan's eye. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement of shared loss, of understanding what it meant to carry grief while still functioning in the world. They took the elevator down together, Miranda walking them to the lobby. Thank you again for coming. You made this workshop immeasurably better. Thank you for the opportunity. Ryan shifted Lily's weight. She was getting tired, leaning against his leg, and for treating me like I had something valuable to contribute. You do. Don't forget that. On the bus ride home, Lily chattered about her day, the other kids, the art supplies, the snacks that included fresh apple slices and cheese cubes instead of the crackers she was used to. Ryan half listened, his mind occupied with the envelope in his pocket and Miranda's offer to consult on her project. $200 felt like a fortune and an insult simultaneously. It was enough to matter practically, but nowhere near enough to change their circumstances fundamentally. Yet Miranda had offered it as payment for expertise Ryan hadn't known he possessed, the expertise of survival, of making impossible choices daily, of understanding poverty from the inside. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ryan opened the envelope and counted the bills. 4 50s, crisp and new. He set aside $80 for Lily's boots, $50 for groceries that would include fresh strawberries this week, and $70 for the slowly growing emergency fund he kept in a coffee can in the kitchen cabinet. His phone buzzed with a text from Miranda. I hope today wasn't too overwhelming. You were brilliant up there, and Lily is absolutely precious. Thanks again for sharing your Saturday with us. Ryan stared at the message. She was thanking him. For what? Agreeing to be put on display? For admitting his failures in front of strangers? For letting her company mining his poverty for insights? But that wasn't fair. She'd treated him with respect throughout, had never made him feel less than, even when the gap between their life circumstances was painfully obvious. He typed, "Thank you for the opportunity, and for being kind to Lily. She liked you. I liked her too. She's got your eyes, very expressive. And her art shows real creativity. You're doing a great job with her." The compliment hit harder than it should have. Ryan set down the phone before he could respond with something too honest, too revealing of how desperately he needed to hear that he was doing okay. But as he drifted towards sleep on his fold-out couch, he allowed himself to wonder if Miranda's offer to consult was genuine, if she really saw value in what he had to contribute, if maybe, possibly, this could become something more than a one-time transaction, not charity, but actual collaboration between two people who understood different pieces of a complicated problem. The thought felt dangerous, felt like hope, and Ryan had learned that hope was the most expensive emotion a poor man could afford. But he had $200 in his pocket and fresh respect from someone who didn't need to give it. That counted for something. That counted for enough to let himself imagine, just for a moment, that maybe Friday night's humiliation had somehow led to something worth experiencing. Maybe Mrs. Chen was right. Maybe bad surprises could become good stories if you waited long enough to see how they ended. The strawberries Ryan bought that Sunday were the good kind. Organic, bright red, actually sweet instead of the hard, flavorless ones he usually settled for. Lily ate them for breakfast with the kind of reverence reserved for special treats, juice running down her chin while she declared them the best strawberries in the whole world. Ryan watched her and thought about how such small luxuries could feel monumental. A $6 container of fruit shouldn't be a significant purchase, but in their world, it represented choices made differently, priorities shifted by an envelope of cash that had appeared because a stranger decided his perspective mattered. Monday morning at the warehouse, Marcus noticed something different. "You seem less tired," he observed during the morning break. "Whatever you did Saturday, it agreed with you." Ryan shrugged, not ready to explain. "Just had a good weekend with my daughter." "Good for you. You've seemed worn down lately." Marcus hesitated, then added, "Look,
I know warehouse work isn't anybody's dream career, but you're reliable and careful. That counts for something here. If you ever want to train for forklift certification, let me know. Pay bump comes with it. Thanks. I'll think about it. Forklift certification meant better hourly wages, but also more responsibility, more potential liability if something went wrong. Ryan filed the information away with all the other opportunities that required risk calculations he couldn't quite make yet. His phone buzzed during lunch. Miranda. I hope this week is treating you well. Would you be available for a quick phone call sometime? I have some follow-up questions from Saturday's workshop, and I value your input. Ryan stared at the message. A phone call felt more personal than texts, more like actual connection than professional transaction. It also felt like another step into territory he didn't fully understand. He typed back, I could do Tuesday evening after 7. That's when my daughter goes to bed. Perfect. I'll call you at 7:15. Thanks, Ryan. Tuesday evening found Ryan pacing their small apartment after tucking Lily in. She'd asked 3 times why he seemed nervous, and he'd deflected with increasing transparency until she'd finally said, It's okay to be nervous sometimes, Daddy. Even grown-ups get nervous. Her 6-year-old wisdom had made him smile, but it hadn't calmed the strange flutter in his chest as 7:15 approached. This was a business call, professional consultation, nothing to be anxious about. His phone rang at exactly 7:15. Ryan answered on the second ring, trying to sound casual. Hello? Ryan, hi. It's Miranda. Is this still a good time? Her voice was different on the phone, warmer somehow, less boardroom and more human. Yeah, Lily's asleep. What did you want to discuss? Several things, actually. First, the feedback from Saturday's workshop was overwhelmingly positive. The team felt like we finally understood the actual barriers people face instead of theoretical ones. Your contributions were specifically cited as eye-opening. Ryan didn't know what to say to that. I just answered honestly. I know, that's what made it valuable. Papers rustled in the background. I'm putting together a proposal for a pilot program. Subsidized produce boxes delivered to underserved neighborhoods. Fresh fruits and vegetables at cost instead of marked up grocery store prices. I'd love your thoughts on the logistics. My thoughts? I'm not a business person, Miranda. I load trucks. You're a person who lives in the exact community we're trying to serve. That makes you more qualified than any business consultant. Her tone shifted, became more earnest. Look, I can run numbers and project margins all day, but I can't know if this will actually work for people like you unless I ask. So I'm asking. Ryan sat down on the couch, processing. Okay, what do you want to know? If we delivered weekly produce boxes to your neighborhood, say $15 for fruits and vegetables that would normally cost $40, would you use it? Absolutely, if the quality was good and the delivery was reliable. What would make you trust it? What would make you skeptical? Ryan thought about the various assistance programs he'd encountered. Food pantries with wilted lettuce, government commodities that came with paperwork and shame. I'd need to see the produce first. Know it wasn't going to be rotten or days old, and the delivery would have to be consistent. If I'm counting on it for meal planning and it doesn't show up, that's worse than not having it at all. That makes sense. What about the money aspect? Would you be willing to prepay, or would you need to pay on delivery? Delivery. $15 a week sounds manageable, but if something unexpected happens, medical bill, car repair, whatever, I need the flexibility to skip a week without losing money already paid. Miranda made a sound like she was writing. Excellent point. What else am I not thinking about? They talked for 40 minutes. Miranda asked questions that revealed how much she didn't know about the practical realities of low-income life. Things like how apartment buildings without secure lobbies made deliveries complicated, how shift work schedules meant delivery windows needed to be flexible, how some people didn't have working refrigerators or proper storage for fresh food. Ryan found himself relaxing into the conversation. Miranda didn't act like his poverty was a character flaw requiring gentle handling. She treated it as data, as information necessary for solving a problem she genuinely wanted to solve. Can I ask you something? Ryan said when the business discussion wound down. Why does this matter to you? You could fund food banks and take the tax write-off. Why put in this kind of effort? Miranda was quiet for a moment. When she spoke,
Her voice carried something vulnerable he hadn't heard before. My grandmother immigrated with nothing, built a life feeding people who couldn't always pay. She taught me that food is dignity made tangible. And I watched her die angry that after everything she'd done, poverty was still winning in her neighborhood. A pause. I have resources now that she never had. It feels obscene to have them, and not use them the way she would have. She raised you? No, my parents did. But she was the person who made me feel like kindness wasn't weakness, like building something meaningful mattered more than just being successful. Miranda's voice shifted again back toward professional. I'm sorry, that's more personal than you probably needed. No, I get it. My late wife was like that. She volunteered at the library, tutored kids for free. She'd have loved what you're trying to build. What was her name? Emma. Saying it still hurt, even 6 years later. She died when Lily was 2 months old. Cancer. I'm so sorry, Ryan. That's impossibly hard. They sat in silence for a moment, connected by phone lines and shared understanding of loss. Then Miranda said softly, Lily mentioned her mom on Saturday, the way she talked about her, about keeping her memory alive. You're doing something right there. Ryan's throat tightened. I'm trying. Some days I feel like I'm failing at everything except loving her. Love is the hardest part to get right. Everything else is logistics. After they hung up, Ryan sat in the dark of his living room and thought about grandmother who fed neighborhoods, and a wife who'd died too young, and a CEO who somehow saw past the gap between their circumstances to something worth respecting. His phone screen showed the call had lasted 53 minutes. He couldn't remember the last time he'd talked to another adult for almost an hour about anything meaningful. The week continued with a strange new rhythm. Wednesday evening, Miranda texted him an article about food desserts with the message, "Does this match your experience?" Ryan read it and texted back a detailed response about how the article missed the transportation issues that made distance to grocery stores only part of the problem. Thursday morning, she sent a photo of a produce box mock-up asking if the portions looked reasonable. Thursday night, Ryan sent back suggestions for adding onions and potatoes, things that keep well in stretch meals. They were developing a dialogue, professional consultation, Ryan reminded himself. She was paying him for insights. This wasn't friendship, wasn't connection beyond utility. But Friday evening, when his phone buzzed with a text asking how his week had been, not about the project, but just about him, Ryan found himself typing back honestly about the forklift certification decision and whether it was worth the risk. Miranda's response came immediately. Risk is just change wearing a scary mask. What does Lily think? Ryan smiled at that. Lily's opinion on forklift certification was enthusiastic. You'd be driving something cool, Daddy, but not particularly informed. He texted Miranda back. She thinks anything that involves driving is automatically awesome. Smart kid. She's right, by the way. Growth always feels risky from the inside. Saturday morning, Ryan woke up to find an email from Miranda with the subject line, Consulting Contract. Inside was a formal agreement offering him $500 a month as a community advisor for the Produce Box pilot program. The contract specified approximately 5 hours of consultation monthly, reviewing materials, participating in planning calls, providing feedback on community rollout strategies. Ryan read it 3 times. $500 a month was groceries and utilities, was breathing room, was the difference between constant crisis management and actually planning ahead. It was also the most anyone had ever valued his opinion at $100 an hour. His phone rang. Miranda, not texting this time. Ryan answered with his heart beating faster than the situation warranted. Did you get the contract? She asked without preamble. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Before you say anything, I want to be clear. This is market rate for consulting work. I'm not doing you a favor. You're doing me one by being willing to engage with this project at a level most consultants couldn't match. Miranda, this is a lot of money. It's fair compensation for expertise. If you'd rather I paid you less, I can revise it. But I'd prefer to pay you what your insights are actually worth. Ryan sat down heavily on the couch. Why are you really doing this? I told you. I need your perspective. You could get perspective from focus groups or surveys or any number of cheaper options. Miranda was quiet for a beat. You want the honest answer?
please? Because you're the first person in years who's looked at me like I'm a human being instead of a bank account or a professional contact. Because your daughter told me I smelled like flowers and meant it as the highest compliment she could give. Because when I think about building something meaningful, I keep coming back to your comment about failing every time you put mac and cheese in Lily's lunchbox. Her voice softened. You remind me why this work matters. That's worth paying for. Ryan didn't know how to respond to that. The honesty felt almost too raw for a professional relationship. Okay, he heard himself say. I'll sign the contract, but on one condition. What's that? You tell me if this crosses any lines, if I'm misunderstanding what this is. Because from where I'm sitting, it's starting to feel like more than consulting. Miranda's breath caught audibly. And what would you call it? I don't know yet, but I think you're the first person since Emma who's made me feel like I might be worth knowing. The silence stretched long enough that Ryan wondered if he'd overstepped catastrophically. Then Miranda said quietly, You are worth knowing, Ryan. I realized that watching you hold yourself together in that restaurant while your world was falling apart. Everything since then has just confirmed it. So what do we do with that? I don't know. I haven't let anyone past my defenses in 7 years. It's terrifying. Yeah, Ryan agreed. It really is. They sat with that admission, connected by phone and honesty that felt dangerous and necessary in equal measure. Finally, Miranda said, How about this? Tomorrow's Sunday. Would you and Lily want to meet me at the library? I'd like to see her in her natural habitat, and then maybe we could walk to that coffee shop on the corner, the one with the hot chocolate that's supposed to be amazing. My treat, no business discussion required. Just 3 people spending time together. Ryan's instinct was to refuse. To maintain boundaries, protect himself, remember that women who looked like Miranda didn't date warehouse workers with more baggage than prospects. But Lily's voice echoed in his head. Someone nice should take you on a date, someone who smells good and smiles a lot. Okay, he said. Lily would love that. What time? They agreed on 2 o'clock. After hanging up, Ryan sat in the quiet apartment and tried to process what had just happened. This wasn't consulting anymore. Wasn't professional networking. This was something else entirely. Something that felt like hope, wrapped in terror, wrapped in the strange possibility that maybe, possibly, good things could happen to people like him. Sunday morning, Ryan told Lily they were meeting a friend at the library. She accepted this with the easy enthusiasm of children who haven't learned to be suspicious of new people. Is it the lady from your work meeting, the one who smelled like mommy? Ryan's chest tightened. Yeah, that's her. Her name is Miranda. Is that okay with you? Lily considered this seriously. Will she like my library books? I think she'll love them. That seemed to settle the matter. Lily spent the morning drawing pictures to show Miranda and selecting her favorite stuffed animal to bring along. Not Mr. Bear this time, but a small rabbit named Clover that Emma had given her shortly before dying. They arrived at the library 10 minutes early. Ryan tried not to pace while Lily showed him the new books display. At exactly 2 o'clock, Miranda walked through the library doors wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater that made her look younger, more approachable than the professional image Ryan was used to. Hi, she said, spotting them. Her smile was genuine, touched with the same nervousness Ryan felt. Hi, Ryan echoed. Lily tugged on his hand. Daddy, introduce me properly. Ryan smiled despite his nerves. Miranda, this is my daughter Lily. Lily, this is my friend Miranda. Hello, Miss Miranda. Lily executed a small curtsy that Mrs. Chen must have taught her. Would you like to see my favorite section of the library? I would love that. For the next 30 minutes, Ryan watched Miranda follow Lily through the children's section, listening attentively while a 6-year-old explained the organizational system and her personal book rating criteria. Miranda asked questions that showed genuine interest, not adult condescension. She admired Lily's drawings with specific praise. The way you did the sky with different shades of blue shows real artistic thinking that made Lily beam with pride. Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, noticed the trio and raised her eyebrows at Ryan with obvious curiosity. He shrugged helplessly, not sure how to explain what this was. Eventually, they left the library with Lily carrying her weekly book haul and chattering about the dragon story she'd just checked out. The coffee shop was warm and crowded, smelling like espresso and cinnamon. They found a corner table while Miranda ordered hot chocolate for Lily with extra whipped cream, coffee for Ryan, and tea for herself. "This place is wonderful," Miranda said, settling into her chair. "I can't believe I've never been here." "It's our Sunday tradition spot," Lily announced. "Sometimes Daddy lets me get a cookie if he has extra money." Ryan flushed, but Miranda's expression didn't change. "That sounds like a perfect tradition. What's your favorite kind of cookie?" "Chocolate chip, but only the ones with lots of chips, not the ones where they're stingy." "An excellent standard. We should order some." Before Ryan could protest, Miranda was at the counter ordering a plate of chocolate chip cookies. She returned with 6 large ones, studded generously with chocolate. "These meet the criteria?" she asked Lily seriously. Lily examined one carefully. "Yes, these are very good cookies." They ate and talked, conversation flowing easier than Ryan had expected. Miranda asked Lily about school, about her drawing, about what she wanted to be when she grew up. Lily asked Miranda about her office, about whether she had any pets, about why she didn't have kids of her own. "Lily, that's personal," Ryan interjected, mortified, but Miranda smiled. "It's okay. I don't have children because I haven't found the right person to have them with yet, and I'm not sure I will. But I like kids very much, you especially." "Why especially me?" Lily asked with a 6-year-old's direct curiosity. "Because you're kind and smart, and you love your daddy very much. Those are all excellent qualities in a person." Lily considered this, then nodded with satisfaction. "You can come to our library days whenever you want." "Thank you. That's a very generous invitation." After an hour, Lily started showing signs of tiredness, her usual Sunday afternoon fade. Ryan gathered their things while Miranda helped Lily into her coat. "Thank you for today," Miranda said as they prepared to leave. "This was exactly what I needed." "We should thank you," Ryan said. "The hot chocolate alone made Lily's week." "Daddy," Lily said suddenly, looking between them with the particular intensity of children who've noticed something adults are trying to hide. "Do you like Miss Miranda?" Ryan's face heated. "Lily, because I think she likes you, and I think you should like her back because she's nice and she smells good and she bought us cookies." Miranda laughed, a genuine sound of delight. "Your daughter is remarkably perceptive." "She gets that from her mother," Ryan said weakly. They walked outside together. The February afternoon was cold but clear, winter sun making Boston streets look almost cheerful. They stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, the moment stretching towards something neither seemed ready to name. Finally, Miranda said, "I'd like to do this again, not consulting, not business, just spending time together." "So would I," Ryan admitted. "But I need to be honest about something." "What's that?" "I don't have anything to offer you. I work in a warehouse, I live paycheck to paycheck, and I come with a 6-year-old daughter who has to be my first priority always. That's not going to change." Miranda met his eyes steadily. "I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking if you'd be willing to let me know you as you are, not as you think you should be." "Why would you want that?" "Because in the 2 weeks since I met you, you've reminded me what it feels like to care about something beyond profit margins. You've shown me kindness isn't weakness and struggling isn't failing. And because Lily told me I smelled like flowers, and for some reason that meant more than any business accomplishment I've had in years." She paused. "I'm not looking for a project, Ryan. I'm looking for connection, and I think you might be too." Ryan glanced down at Lily, who was watching with fascination. "What do you think, baby girl? Should we be friends with Miss Miranda?" "Yes," Lily said immediately, "because she makes you smile like you used to smile in the pictures with Mommy. Not exactly the same, but close." The observation hit Ryan like a physical blow. He hadn't realized he'd stopped smiling that way. Hadn't noticed the difference between politeness and genuine joy until his daughter pointed it out. "Okay," he said to Miranda. "Let's figure out what this is, together." Miranda's smile was soft with relief and something that looked like hope. Together sounds perfect. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Ryan sat on his fold-out couch and thought about the strange trajectory his life had taken since that humiliating Friday night 3 weeks ago. From devastation to dignity to something that felt dangerously close to the possibility of happiness. His phone buzzed with a text from Miranda.
Thank you for today. Lily is extraordinary, and watching you with her makes it clear where she gets it from. Sleep well, Ryan. He typed back. Thank you for seeing us. Both of us. It's been a long time since I felt like someone was actually looking. The response came quickly. I'm looking. And I like what I see. Good night.
Ryan set down the phone and let himself feel something he'd thought was gone forever. The cautious, fragile sense that maybe the universe wasn't entirely hostile. That maybe kindness could find you even in your worst moments. That maybe, possibly, a man with nothing but love and determination could still deserve someone's genuine attention. The consulting contract was real. The money would help. But what mattered more was the way Miranda had knelt down to Lily's level and talked to her like a person worth listening to. The way she'd ordered extra cookies without making it about charity. The way she'd admitted her own fears about connection instead of pretending invulnerability. Ryan didn't know where this was going. Didn't know if someone like Miranda could really build a life with someone like him, or if this was just a moment of connection that would fade when reality reasserted itself. But for the first time since Emma died, he was willing to find out. Willing to risk being hurt for the chance at something real. Willing to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was worth the kind of care Miranda seemed determined to offer. Outside, Boston moved through its Sunday evening rhythms. Inside, Ryan fell asleep thinking about jasmine perfume and chocolate chip cookies and the way his daughter had said he smiled like he used to. Not exactly the same, but close. Close enough to count as healing. Close enough to feel like hope. The consulting work became real faster than Ryan expected. Within 2 weeks, Miranda had him reviewing community outreach materials, testing recipe cards designed for the produce boxes, and participating in video calls with her development team. The $500 a month stopped feeling like charity and started feeling like what it was. Compensation for expertise he'd spent years developing without knowing it had value. But the personal connection developed even faster. Tuesday evenings became phone calls that stretched past midnight, conversations that wandered from business to books to the small observations about life that people only share when they're not performing anymore. Thursday afternoons, Miranda started appearing at the library during Lily's after-school reading time, bringing coffee for Ryan and juice boxes for Lily, sitting with them while they picked out books. "You don't have to keep doing this," Ryan said one Thursday in early March, watching Miranda help Lily sound out a difficult word. "Don't you have a company to run?" "I have very competent people who run things when I'm not there. That's what delegation means." Miranda looked up from the book. "Besides, this is the best part of my week." Lily beamed at that. She'd adopted Miranda with the swift certainty of children who recognize safe adults. Started calling her Miss Miranda without prompting, saving drawings specifically for her, asking when she'd visit next with the kind of eager anticipation that made Ryan's chest ache with hope and fear in equal measure. Because this couldn't last. Ryan kept waiting for the moment when Miranda would realize what she'd gotten herself into. The reality of his life wasn't romantic struggle, it was just struggle. Broken appliances and emergency room visits and the grinding exhaustion of never having enough while needing to be everything for a child who deserved more. The moment came on a rainy Saturday in mid-March. Ryan was supposed to meet Miranda for lunch while Lily was at a birthday party. But that morning, Lily woke up with a fever of 103 and a cough that sounded like something breaking inside her small chest. Ryan called out of his warehouse shift. There went a day's pay he desperately needed, and took Lily to urgent care because their insurance didn't cover regular pediatrician visits, and the ER was too expensive unless it was genuinely life-threatening. They waited 3 hours in a room full of other sick kids while Lily dozed fitfully against his shoulder, hot and miserable. The diagnosis was bronchitis. Antibiotics would cost $60 even with his insurance. The doctor recommended a humidifier, another $40 he didn't have. Ryan nodded through the discharge instructions and carried Lily back to the bus stop, trying to figure out which bill he could delay paying to cover medication. His phone had died hours ago. When they finally got home and he plugged it in, 17 missed calls from Miranda appeared along with increasingly worried texts. "Are you okay? You missed lunch. Please let me know you're safe." Ryan called her back with Lily sleeping fitfully on the couch, an apology already forming. "I'm sorry. Lily got sick. I had to take her to urgent care. My phone died." "Is she all right?" Miranda's voice was sharp with concern, not anger. Bronchitis. She'll be fine, just needs antibiotics and rest. Did you eat today? Ryan realized he hadn't. Had given Lily the crackers from his pocket at urgent care and forgotten about himself entirely. Not yet. I'll make something. I'm coming over. Miranda, you don't have to. I'm already in my car. Text me your address. She hung up before Ryan could protest further. He looked around their apartment with fresh eyes, seeing it as Miranda would. The cramped space, the secondhand furniture, the general shabbiness of a life lived on the edge of not enough. He'd never invited her here, had kept their meetings in public spaces where the gap between their circumstances was less starkly visible. 40 minutes later, Miranda knocked on the door carrying grocery bags and a pharmacy bag. She'd stopped for both. Ryan stared at her standing in his doorway in expensive jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than his monthly food budget, holding supplies she'd bought without asking because she'd known he needed them. How did you know which pharmacy? I called 3 near your address until one confirmed they had a prescription waiting for Lily Mercer. Miranda stepped inside without waiting for invitation, setting bags on the small kitchen counter. I paid for the antibiotics. Don't argue. You can pay me back if it makes you feel better, but she needs medicine now, not whenever you figure out the budget. Ryan's throat closed. The humidifier too? And some soup and bread and fresh fruit because I'm guessing you haven't been grocery shopping this week. Miranda finally looked at him directly. Ryan, you look exhausted. When did you last sleep? I sleep fine. That's not what I asked. They stared at each other across his tiny kitchen. Ryan felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the apartment's shabbiness and everything to do with Miranda seeing exactly how close to the edge he lived constantly. Why are you doing this? His voice came out rougher than intended. You could date anyone. Men with careers and retirement accounts and houses in the suburbs. Why are you standing in my rundown apartment buying antibiotics for my sick kid? Miranda set down the grocery bag she'd been unpacking. Do you want the polite answer or the honest one? Honest. Always honest. Because you're the first man in 7 years who's made me feel something besides numb. Because your daughter tells me about dust bunny dragons with complete sincerity. Because you work 60-hour weeks and still show up to library reading time with Lily's favorite snacks. Because when I watch you parent, I see someone giving everything they have and somehow it's enough even when it shouldn't be. She moved closer. I'm not here because I'm rescuing you, Ryan. I'm here because you make me remember what it feels like to care about something that can't be quantified in profit margins. I can't give you what you deserve. You don't get to decide what I deserve. I do. Miranda reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm against his cold ones. I know you're scared. I'm scared too, but I'd rather be scared with you than comfortable and alone. From the couch, Lily's small voice interrupted. Daddy? Is Miss Miranda here? The moment broke. Ryan squeezed Miranda's hand once before releasing it and moving to the couch. Yeah, baby girl, she brought your medicine. Lily's face was flushed with fever, her hair damp with sweat, but she smiled when she saw Miranda. You came. Of course I came. I heard you weren't feeling well. Miranda knelt beside the couch, her hand gentle on Lily's forehead. You're very warm, sweetheart. Let's get that medicine in you, okay? Over the next hour, Miranda moved through Ryan's apartment with quiet efficiency. She administered Lily's first dose of antibiotics, set up the humidifier in the bedroom, heated soup that she coaxed Lily into eating despite her lack of appetite. She didn't act like any of this was charity or burden. She just did what needed doing with the same competent attention she probably brought to running her company. Ryan watched from the doorway while Miranda read to Lily in a soft voice, her expensive sweater getting wrinkled as she sat on his threadbare couch, and something fundamental shifted in his understanding of what this relationship could be. You're good at this, he said quietly when Lily dozed off mid-story. Miranda looked up. At what? Being here. Not making it weird. Why would it be weird? She's sick. She needs care. That's not complicated. Miranda stood carefully, leaving Lily sleeping. Though I should probably head out and let you both rest. Stay. The word escaped before Ryan could reconsider it. Please. If you want to. I mean, there's not much to do here, but I'd like that. They ended up sitting on the floor with their backs against the couch,
because that's where they could watch Lily sleep and talk without waking her. Miranda had kicked off her expensive shoes. Her hair was coming loose from its neat bun. She looked more real than Ryan had ever seen her. "Tell me about Emma," Miranda said softly. "If you want to. I feel like I should know her, since she made Lily, and Lily is extraordinary." Ryan hadn't talked about Emma, really talked about her, not just surface mentions, in years. But sitting in the dim apartment with Miranda's shoulder warm against his, he found himself remembering. She was a teacher, 2nd grade, loved it with this incredible passion, like every 7-year-old was personally important to her. Ryan's voice was quiet. "She got pregnant, and we were so happy. Then when Lily was 3 weeks old, Emma found a lump. By the time they diagnosed it, the cancer was everywhere." Miranda's hand found his, held tight. "She fought for 2 months. Never got to see Lily smile or hear her laugh. The last thing she said to me was, 'Make sure our baby knows she was wanted.'" Ryan's throat constricted. "So I tell Lily every night, every single night, 'You are so wanted, baby girl. Mommy and Daddy wanted you more than anything.'" "You're honoring her," Miranda said. "Every day with Lily, you're honoring Emma's love." "I'm trying, but I'm so tired, Miranda. I'm tired of choosing between rent and food. Tired of watching other kids get opportunities Lily can't have. Tired of feeling like I'm failing the one person who matters most." The admission came out raw. "And then you show up, and you're kind, and you make me feel like maybe I'm not completely drowning, and that terrifies me because what happens when you realize this is too hard? When you wake up and remember you could have someone whose life isn't held together with duct tape and prayers." Miranda turned to face him fully. "Ryan, look at me." He did. Her eyes were serious, intense. "I'm 42 years old. I've built a company from nothing, survived a public divorce, and spent 7 years convinced I was better off alone. I don't do things I'm not sure about." She cupped his face with one hand. "I'm sure about you, about Lily, about wanting to be part of whatever this becomes. The struggle doesn't scare me. What scares me is walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what I missed. What if I can't be what you need? What if you already are?" Ryan kissed her. Couldn't stop himself. Couldn't maintain the distance he'd been using as armor. Miranda kissed him back with the kind of certainty that made everything else quiet for one perfect moment. When they broke apart, Lily was watching them with sleepy satisfaction. "I told Daddy you liked him," she announced, her voice raspy from illness. "I'm always right about these things." Miranda laughed, warm and genuine. "You absolutely are." The following weeks brought a shift in their relationship's texture. Miranda came over most evenings after work, bringing dinner because Ryan's kitchen was too small for 2 people to cook comfortably, but his table was perfect for 3 people to eat together. She learned Lily's bedtime routine, discovered she was surprisingly good at bath time negotiations, and proved completely helpless at braiding hair, which Lily found hilarious. "Miss Miranda, you have to cross them tighter." "I am crossing them tighter. Your hair is very slippery." "That's because Daddy uses the good conditioner now, the kind you said made hair healthy." Ryan watched from the doorway, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. This was his life now. A woman who could afford anything choosing to spend her evenings in his cramped apartment fighting with his daughter's hair. Choosing them. In early April, Miranda's produce box pilot program launched in Ryan's neighborhood. He'd consulted on every aspect: the delivery logistics, the box contents, the payment system that allowed weekly flexibility. On launch day, Miranda insisted he come to the warehouse where the program operated to see the first boxes assembled and loaded for delivery. "This is your program too," she said, handing him a clipboard with delivery routes. "None of this would work without your input." Ryan watched workers, paid fairly, Miranda had made sure of that, pack boxes with fresh vegetables and fruits that would reach families at prices that made nutrition accessible instead of aspirational. His insights had helped build this. His experience, his struggle, his understanding of what people actually needed versus what looked good in proposals. "How does it feel like?" Miranda asked, standing beside him as the first delivery truck pulled out. "Like maybe the hard parts weren't pointless." She squeezed his hand. "They never were." The program was immediately successful. Demand exceeded projections. Local news picked up the story.
wanted to interview the CEO who'd disrupted traditional food distribution. Miranda agreed on the condition that they interview Ryan too, the community consultant who'd made the program work. "I can't do interviews," Ryan protested. "I'm not articulate enough for that." "You're exactly articulate enough. You tell the truth without polish. That's worth more than corporate speak." The interview aired on a Tuesday evening. Ryan watched himself on screen talking about food insecurity, about the dignity of access, about how this program meant his daughter could have fresh strawberries without him feeling like he'd failed at budgeting. He sounded reasonably intelligent, looked tired but earnest. Lily was entranced. "Daddy, you're on TV." "Just for a minute, baby girl." "But everyone will see you. Everyone will know you're helping people." That night, Ryan's phone exploded with texts from people he hadn't heard from in years. Old army buddies, former coworkers, even his mother, who'd been conspicuously absent during the worst years, suddenly proud now that there was something public to be proud of. But the message that mattered came from Marcus at the warehouse. "Saw you on the news. Didn't know you were doing all that. We should talk about that forklift certification." The certification training started in May. It meant 3 evenings a week for 6 weeks, time Ryan didn't have but couldn't afford not to make. Miranda adjusted her schedule to be with Lily those evenings, picking her up from Mrs. Chen's and handling dinner and bedtime with the kind of natural competence that made Ryan wonder how he'd ever managed alone. "You don't have to do this," he told her one evening when he came home to find Miranda and Lily building an elaborate blanket fort. "I know. I want to." Miranda crawled out of the fort, her hair full of static. "Besides, Lily's teaching me about dust bunny dragons. This is important education." "They're very real," Lily called from inside the fort. "Miss Miranda understands." Ryan passed the certification exam on his first attempt. The pay bump was immediate, $6 more per hour, which translated to nearly $1,000 extra monthly. Combined with Miranda's consulting fees, Ryan found himself with something he'd never had as an adult: financial breathing room. "I can pay you back now," he told Miranda over coffee one Saturday. "For the antibiotics, for the groceries, all of it." Miranda set down her cup. "Is that what you want? For us to keep careful accounting of debts and payments?" "I don't want to owe you." "You don't owe me, Ryan. Partners help each other. That's what partnership means." "Is that what we are? Partners?" She looked at him directly. "What would you call it?" Ryan thought about the way Miranda had become woven into their daily lives. How Lily asked for her when she wasn't there. How the apartment felt emptier on evenings when Miranda had business dinners or late meetings. How he'd started thinking in terms of we and us instead of just him and Lily. "I'd call it love," he said quietly, "if I thought you felt the same way." Miranda's smile was soft with relief. "I fell in love with you the night I watched you try to keep your dignity in that restaurant. Everything since then has just been falling deeper." They sat with that admission, the weight and wonder of it. Then Ryan said, "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I got a scholarship, full ride to finish my degree at the State University, business management. It's 50 miles away, which means relocating." He watched her face carefully. "Classes start in September. I'd have to move this summer." Miranda's expression didn't change. "That's incredible, Ryan. You should absolutely do it. It means leaving Boston, leaving you. It means building a future for yourself and Lily. That's more important than anything else." Miranda reached across the table. "I'm not going to ask you to give up opportunities because I want you close. That's not love, that's possession. So what do? We figure it out. 50 miles isn't insurmountable. And maybe," she paused, choosing words carefully, "maybe I've been thinking about expanding operations outside Boston anyway. The produce program could work in college towns, lots of students struggling with food insecurity." Ryan stared at her. "You'd move?" "I'd consider it. Not because of you, though that's a factor, but because the work matters and could scale better in a place with lower overhead costs and different demographics." Miranda squeezed his hand. "I'm not saying I'm definitely moving. I'm saying I'm willing to explore the possibility because I want to be where you are. That's a huge decision." Love makes you willing to consider huge decisions. The summer passed in a blur of preparation. Ryan gave notice at the warehouse. Marcus shook his hand and told him he'd be welcome back any time. The consulting work with Miranda transitioned to a remote arrangement that paid the same but required fewer in-person hours. And Ryan found an affordable apartment near the university that was bigger than their Boston place, with an actual bedroom for Lily and a second room that could be his study. Lily processed the move with 6-year-old resilience. "Will Miss Miranda come visit?" "As often as she can," Ryan promised. "And we'll visit her too." "Good, because I love her." "Me too, baby girl. Me too." Moving day arrived in mid-August. Miranda had hired movers despite Ryan's protests, insisting that he didn't need to physically haul everything himself when help was available. She showed up at 6 in the morning with coffee and donuts, dressed in jeans and ready to work. "You're not supposed to be here," Ryan said. "You have that board meeting." "I rescheduled. This is more important." She handed him coffee. "Let's get your family moved." By evening, everything they owned was in the new apartment. It wasn't much. Ryan's entire life fit in one medium-sized truck. But it was theirs, and it was a fresh start. Lily ran through the empty rooms, her voice echoing, declaring which corner would be for her stuffed animals and where her drawing table should go. Miranda helped Ryan assemble Lily's bed while the sun set through windows that actually had a view of trees instead of brick walls. They worked in companionable silence, the kind that came from knowing someone well enough that talking wasn't necessary. "I'm scared," Ryan admitted, tightening a bolt. "What if I can't handle the coursework? What if I'm too old, too out of practice?" "Then you'll study hard and ask for help and figure it out. Same way you figured everything else out." Miranda handed him another bolt. "You're one of the most determined people I've ever met, Ryan. You'll succeed because giving up isn't in your vocabulary." "Thank you for believing that. Thank you for letting me." They finished the bed and found Lily asleep on the living room floor, exhausted from the excitement. Ryan carried her to her new room while Miranda made up the bed with fresh sheets she'd brought. Together they tucked in a sleeping child who'd survived losing her mother, moving, and every upheaval Ryan's financial struggles had created, and somehow remained joyful. "She's going to be okay," Miranda whispered, smoothing Lily's hair back. "Because of you," Ryan said. "You showed up when we needed someone most." Miranda turned to face him in the dim bedroom. "You showed me what really mattered. That's a fair exchange." They moved to the kitchen where Ryan had exactly 2 chairs and no table yet. Sat on the floor eating pizza Miranda had ordered, surveying the boxes that would take weeks to properly unpack. "When do classes start?" Miranda asked. 3 weeks. I'm terrified and excited in equal measure." "Good. That means you're alive." She leaned against his shoulder. "I have news too." "Yeah?" "I'm opening a satellite office in Springfield, 15 miles from here. We'll pilot the produce program in 3 college towns, including this one. I'll need a local consultant who understands the community." She looked at him with barely contained excitement. "The position pays $75,000 a year, benefits included. I'm hoping you'll apply." Ryan's brain stuttered. "That's not consulting. That's a full-time job." "It is. One you're qualified for because you've been doing the work for months and proving you're excellent at it." Miranda took his hand. "You can take classes, work remotely, build something meaningful, and I'll be close enough that we can have dinner together most nights instead of just weekends. You're offering me a job so you can be near me? I'm offering you a job because you're the best person for it. The proximity is just an excellent side benefit." Miranda's expression turned serious. "But Ryan, I need you to understand. This job is yours because you earned it, not because we're together. If you take it, you'll report to a regional manager, not to me. I won't be your boss. I'll just be Miranda, your girlfriend who happens to own the company." "Girlfriend?" Ryan tested the word. It felt simultaneously too small and exactly right. "Unless you prefer a different term." "No, girlfriend works." He kissed her, tasting possibility and pizza and the strange miracle of second chances. "I'll apply for the job, properly, with a resume and everything. I look forward to receiving your application." September arrived with the perfect clarity of New England autumn. Ryan started classes, business fundamentals, accounting, management theory, and discovered he was good at this. The concepts clicked, the reading was manageable. The professors were impressed by his real-world experience, the way he could connect theories to actual practice. He also started his new job, working remotely from the apartment while Lily was in school, attending meetings via video call, and slowly building the foundation for expanding Miranda's program into college communities. The work felt meaningful in ways warehouse labor never had, not because physical work lacked value, but because this work engaged parts of his brain that had been dormant for years. And Miranda was there. Not every day, not smothering, but present in the way that mattered. Tuesday dinners became their tradition, weekend mornings at the farmer's market with Lily, quiet evenings after Lily's bedtime when they could just exist together without performance or pressure. In October, Lily's school held a family drawing event. Children were supposed to draw their families and explain the pictures to classmates. Ryan expected the usual, him and Lily and Mommy in heaven. But when he arrived, Lily's drawing showed three figures, a tall man labeled Daddy, a small girl labeled Me, and a woman with dark hair labeled Miranda, who loves us. Ryan's eyes stung. The teacher smiled gently. She talks about Miranda often. It's clear she's an important person in Lily's life. That evening, Ryan showed Miranda the drawing. She stared at it for a long moment, her finger tracing the careful crayon lines. She drew me, Miranda said softly. In her family. Is that okay? I can talk to her if it's too much. It's perfect. Miranda's voice was thick with emotion. I love you both. You know that, right? Yeah, Ryan said. We know. Good. Miranda set down the drawing carefully. Because I've been thinking about something, and I want to run it by you before I do anything. Okay. She pulled out her phone and showed him a jewelry website. A simple ring, elegant but not ostentatious. I want to marry you, Ryan. Not now. We're not there yet, but someday. And I wanted you to know I'm thinking about forever, not just right now. Ryan's heart hammered against his ribs. You want to marry a guy who's still in college at 35? I want to marry the man who makes me laugh, who parents with his whole heart, who fights for dignity even when the world tries to strip it away. Miranda looked at him directly. I want to marry you because you make me want to be better than I am, and because when I think about my future, you and Lily are in every version of it. I can't afford a ring like that. Then don't buy one. I'll buy my own ring, and you can give me something that matters to you. Love isn't about cost, Ryan. It's about choice. I choose you, Ryan said. Every day, I choose you. Then we'll figure out the timing together. By December, Ryan's life looked nothing like it had a year ago. He was maintaining a 3.7 GPA while working a job that paid enough for savings and stability. Lily was thriving in her new school, making friends, bringing home artwork that covered their refrigerator. And Miranda was family in every way that mattered. The person who showed up for school plays and helped with homework and kissed Ryan goodnight with the kind of certainty that made tomorrow feel possible. On a cold Friday evening, Ryan proposed. Not with a ring he couldn't afford, but with Emma's wedding band, cleaned and polished, offered with his late wife's blessing spoken in his heart, because Emma had loved him enough to want him happy, even if she couldn't be there to see it. Miranda Steele, will you marry me? Will you be Lily's mom and my partner and part of this strange, beautiful thing we've built? They were in the kitchen of their apartment, Lily already asleep. Nothing fancy, nothing planned, just truth spoken plainly. Miranda took the ring with trembling fingers. Yes, absolutely yes. It was Emma's, Ryan said. If that's weird, it's perfect. It means you're not asking me to replace her. You're asking me to honor what she started. Miranda slipped it on her finger. It fit perfectly. Thank you for trusting me with this, with everything. Thank you for showing up that night, for seeing me when I thought I was invisible. You were never invisible, Ryan. You were just waiting for someone to look. In February, exactly 1 year after that humiliating Friday night that had destroyed and remade Ryan's world, they returned to Marcello's Italian kitchen. All three of them, Ryan, Miranda, and Lily, who'd insisted on wearing her fanciest dress for the occasion. They sat at the same table by the window where Ryan had once waited alone with $50 and disappearing hope. But this time, the table held 3 place settings, 3 smiles, and a future that felt solid instead of precarious. Lily drew pictures on her placemat while they waited for food. Miranda and Ryan held hands across the table, their rings catching the candlelight. And when the meals arrived, chicken marsala, just like Miranda had ordered that first night, Ryan took a moment to appreciate the complete improbability of their trajectory. From humiliation to dignity to love, from charity that preserved honor to partnership that demanded nothing except honesty. From a man who'd thought he had nothing to offer to a man who'd learned his struggle itself was valuable. His survival was expertise. His heart was enough. "What are you thinking about?" Miranda asked, squeezing his hand. "How that night, the worst night I'd had in years, somehow led to this. The universe works in strange ways. I don't think it was the universe. I think it was you, being brave enough to help a stranger." Miranda smiled. "Maybe we were both brave. You, for showing up despite everything. Me, for refusing to look away." Lily looked up from her drawing. "Daddy? Miss Miranda, I finished my picture." She turned the placemat around. It showed the restaurant table from above. 3 stick figures labeled carefully in her improving handwriting. "Daddy, Mommy Miranda, and me." Ryan's throat closed. He looked at Miranda, saw tears in her eyes that matched his own. "Is it okay I called you Mommy?" Lily asked Miranda with sudden uncertainty. "I know you're not my real mommy, but you love me like a mommy does, so I thought maybe—" Miranda knelt beside Lily's chair, pulling the little girl into a fierce hug. "It's more than okay, sweetheart. It's the best thing anyone has ever called me." "Good," Lily said with satisfaction, hugging back. "Because you're the best mommy anyone could ask for, even if you still can't braid hair right." They laughed through tears, the 3 of them holding each other while the restaurant moved around them. And Ryan thought about dignity preserved becoming love, discovered becoming family built from broken pieces and brave choices, and the simple miracle of someone seeing you at your worst and deciding you were worth knowing at your best. The check came. Ryan paid it, could afford it now, with money that came from work he'd earned and a future he'd built through determination and Miranda's unflinching belief that he was worth investing in. As they left the restaurant, walking into Boston's winter night with Lily between them holding both their hands, Ryan looked back at the window where he'd once sat alone. That version of himself felt both distant and essential, the man he'd needed to be to become the man he was now. "Thank you," he said to Miranda, "for everything, for seeing me. Thank you for letting me see you." Miranda kissed him softly. "For trusting me with your heart and your daughter and your future." "Our future," Ryan corrected. "All of ours." They walked toward the car, toward home, toward the ordinary, extraordinary life they were building together. And behind them, Marcello's Italian kitchen continued serving dinners to couples and families, and people sitting alone at tables, waiting for something to change. Sometimes change arrived in humiliation and cruelty. Sometimes it arrived in quiet kindness from strangers who refused to look away. And sometimes, rarely, beautifully, it arrived in the form of love that asked nothing except the courage to keep showing up, keep trying, keep believing that the worst moments could somehow become doorways to the best ones. Ryan Mercer, once a man with $50 and vanishing hope, now had everything that mattered. Not because his circumstances had become easy, but because he'd found someone willing to stand beside him while he fought for better. Someone who saw his struggle as strength instead of weakness. Someone who loved him not despite his limitations, but because of who he'd become while navigating them. And in a city full of lonely people hoping for connection, 3 hearts had found each other and built something worth keeping. Something that started with humiliation in a restaurant and ended with family in the same restaurant a year later, proving that sometimes the worst nights become the best stories. Sometimes you just need one person to see you drowning and throw you a lifeline. And sometimes that lifeline becomes the foundation for everything beautiful that comes after.